Hi, and welcome to another edition of Zombiepalooza Radio. We're going to start a few minutes early, as probably customary from now on out, to make sure that we are showing Indeed on, hi Scott, showing Indeed on YouTube and all of that fun stuff. So usually I guess there's like about a 3 to 5 minute lag or something before it starts to actually play. Need to make sure that that's working. So, well, I'm your host, Jackie Chin, but I have some very important people that I generally have with me. And of course, one of those is Scott Pearson. He's head of all things green and our research department for Zombiepalooza Radio. How you doing, Scott? I need you to unmute.
I knew that. I said, I'm doing fantastic tonight, Jackie, and I lied because I'm forgetting to unmute. That's not a good way to start.
Well, we haven't brought on our first guest yet, so we want to make sure that everything is, copacetic. Go ahead and check to see if we are indeed playing on our YouTube channel. We also can be heard on Zombiepalooza Radio live on Google Plus too. If you want to go ahead and send us a message over there, we can take that. And let's see. I have Lisa Vasquez. She's over here. Scott, go ahead and mute your mic. I have Lisa Vasquez over here trying to message me. She's got a very cool new cover she's working on for her latest release, The Unfleshed. It looks pretty good. All right, speaking of Lisa Vasquez and all of that fun stuff, we have some really cool things that are going on over at Stitch Smile Publications. We have, let's see, we've got 4 works that are going to be coming out this month, 2 on the 23rd and 2 on the 30th. We have, let's see, I'm going to go over and get the page and all of that. Stitch Smile Publications. Please go over to Stitch Smile Publications and give us a like and a share. That would be kind of cool. Something pretty neat for you guys to do for us. Right now we're standing at, let's see, how many likes we got on this thing. 477 plus 3 new this week, thanks to Charles Garcia and about 117 other friends. That's pretty cool. We're moving up in the post ranks too. We got 825 post reach. Not bad. We have a big thank you. Shout out to our 105 people who are post engaging on Stitch Smile Publications. Thank you so much. Let's see. Looking to
answer
see.
your question, Jackie, the YouTube page is live and broadcast.
Cool. Cool, very excited. Hey, while I go to look at a couple other things, why don't you go ahead and tell what the lineup is going to be this evening?
Oh, okay. I'm over on the YouTube page. Hang on just a second.
All right.
All righty. And tonight we've got authors, and we've got a very special guest from Face Off. In our first hour, we're going to have author Dries, and then second hour, Mark Tufo is going to be coming back. Third hour is going to be Nicole Cushing, who wasn't able to be on last week due to a sudden, unavoidable situation. But we are so happy to have her on this week. She was nominated for not 1, but 2 Bram Stoker Awards. Nominated for Superior Achievement in a First Novel for Mr. Suicide, and nominated for Superior Achievement in a Fiction Collection for The Mirrors. And looking forward to talking to her tonight. In the 11 to 12 hour, we will have special guest Kevon Ward from Season 9 of Face Off, and he's going to be talking about his experiences on Face Off and his new web series, Bored as Hell. So looking forward to that as well. Author Jas T. Ward is going to be rounding out the show tonight in our final hour, and I'm definitely looking forward to this. We're going to have fun tonight.
Absolutely, we certainly are. All right, so for Stitch Smile Publications, we have Isabel Castruda, and she is going to be bringing out her Hell's Guardian Chronicles book 1 and 2 that are going to be coming out on the 23rd of March. Then we have our very own Mark Freeman, who is going to be coming out with 2 of his works. And I'm going over to check out what the titles are for that. Mark Freeman also does our marketing, helps with marketing, and he makes some pretty cool videos for our book trailers, and he is an extremely valuable asset at Stitch Smile Publications. And let's see, I'm trying to get the name of, I've been working on all of that this month, and I cannot believe that that skipped my brain of what the series is for him. But catch that in a few hot minutes. So, Scott, what kind of things have been going on in the area of all things green?
Well, been talking back and forth with Christopher Mim, trying to set up the time for him to be able to come on. He's going to be busy for the next couple of few weeks. He's doing convention circuits, but he is the... I'm getting a serious echo. Do you hear an echo?
I do not hear an echo. Please go forward.
It's gone. He is the producer and writer and director of several beautiful B-movie tributes, Destination Outer Space, House of Ghosts, The Giant Spider. There's so many. There's like 10 of them. And he's working currently on a new project called Wereskeedo Nazi Hunter. And yes, you heard me right. Not a werewolf, not a werepuma, a Wereskeedo. This is frightening to me. I'm wondering if the Zika virus is one of his weapons, but looking definitely forward to seeing that.
Oh man, no.
Christopher Mim will be on the show at some point. We're trying to work out when he can fit it around convention schedulings, but I'm very much look forward to having him on. You're gonna love him.
All right, so Michael Freeman has 2 books that are going to be coming out. One is Strychnine, and the other one is Strigoi. It's spelled Strigoi. Guaranteed, though, within this month to have as many vampires and werewolves as you could possibly sink your teeth into, and we're going to have a pretty good time with that. So what do you think about this, all this vampire, werewolf, and all of that kind of fun thing going on?
I'm loving it. Actually, another of our upcoming guests, Suzanne Linehan, is a author who writes in not just zombie but vampire, the aforementioned werepumas, in addition to werewolves, and the whole cast of just totally unique characterizations that make her Dead Hearts series pretty addictive.
All right, I got the spelling for I think it's Strigoi. Donnell Whiting is also co-writing with that particular book, and we look forward to seeing what these 2 as a team are going to produce for Stitch Smile Publications. Woohoo!
All right, spelling, I'll go ahead and bring it up.
Strigoi, or actually, no, it's not spelled like that. And you can't bring it up because it's not published yet. So good luck with that.
Oh, okay.
I know, okay, right?
Well, never mind.
This goes to prove that I'm not sure if my staff actually listens to what I have to say or they just go along with it. But, they try. They do.
Well,
we have to give a shout out to Dead Door William and Crunchy, they seem to be out and about, and right now they're currently MIA. Hope everything is okay over there. Hopefully we'll be able to get some information at some point in either the next couple of hours or within the next day or so to find out what the heck is going on. I don't like it when my staff is MIA. All right, so we are going to be going on the planet, traveling over to Australia, and we're going to be bringing Aaron Dries over. And he actually is from the area of Australia, but he is currently living in Samoa. Samoa. And it's interesting. We're going to find out how he creates his characters and environments for his particular works. Some very impressive stuff going on over there with Aaron Dries. Anything else you want to add to before we go ahead and start this crazy madness we call Zombiepalooza Radio?
Only that I was paying attention, but you know as well as I do, a lot of these authors do put advanced pages on Facebook and other locations, Google Plus. So that's what I was going to try and look up.
Oh, you were catching me on it. I don't know. We'll have to ask Lisa Vasquez and see.
Tell me I wasn't paying attention.
We have any pages over there and or anything like that for the works that are going to be coming out. She was messaging me like a mad, crazed individual, letting me know what was going on. So I don't know if she's still listening. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to capture Aaron, and we're going to bring him to the show. Come on down. Click the link. Oh, Dries, as in it rhymes with. Okay, all right. I got a correction on. Yeah, I wrote it like that too. Dries, Dries. All right, so yeah, here we go. Click that button.
And it rhymes with House of Size, also one of his books.
It sure does. So we are expecting Aaron any minute now. Going to pull up his information so that
Actually, I've already got it here. Avid traveler, former pizza boy, retail clerk, kitchen hand, aged care worker, video director, and copywriter. Aaron Dries was born and raised in New South Wales, Australia. When asked why he writes horror, his standard reply is that when it comes to scaring people, writing pays slightly better than jumping out from behind doors. Good point. He's the author of the award-winning House of Size, and his subsequent novels, The Fallen Boys and A Place for Sinners, are just as, if not more, twisted than his debut. Feel free to drop him a line at aarondries.com. He won't bite much. Seems like our kind of people.
All right, so welcome to Zombiepalooza Radio for your very first time, and all the way currently from down under in Australia. Hello, Aaron Dries.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. All right, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you on the big screen. I'm going to introduce you to one of my co-hosts for the show. His name is Scott Pearson. Go ahead and say hello, Scott.
Welcome to the show, Aaron. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking at your Amazon page now. I just read your bio for the family.
Heaven help me. Here we go. And very nice to meet you.
Absolutely. All right. Go ahead, Scott, and mute your mic while we get started. Get myself situated over here. All right. You are interested in the genre of horror thriller. Please go ahead and tell our listeners and people who may not know you a little bit about your background, how you got started in writing horror thrillers, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you very much. So, hello people, my name is Aaron Dries. I'm an Australian author. I have loved the horror, thriller, supernatural, the entire spectrum since I was a kid, and I remember being told, it's okay, he'll grow out of it, and I'm happy to prove people wrong on that front, as I'm sure everyone is. I've always had a real strong draw to psychological horror, although that's not exclusively what I do. It's what my 3 novels have been primarily based in, and I'm just interested with what makes people tick, and ordinary people in extraordinary solutions. That whole Stephen King's Steven Spielberg type emblem philosophy that is drilled into you as a kid, and it's something that I wanted to explore always. And I've been writing fiction and illustrating things and drawing and making my own comics since I was very, very young, and was watching things that I shouldn't have been watching when I was way too young because I would sneak out. And I remember our old VCR used to make this horrific crunching sound when it would rewind, and after Mum and Dad had gone to bed, I would sneak out and rewind A Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember hearing the clunk of the machine. Don't wake them, don't wake them. So I saw things way too young and was terrified, and have never been able to shake the appeal since. And I just knew that I wanted to explore that type of reaction, and evoke it in other people as well. And since then, I've been trying to do that, and I'm certainly not going to turn back now. And I'm fascinated by the type of reactions people have to horror, because horror is so diverse, and people's reactions are diverse. It's a really, really interesting genre to work in, and I love it. It's very human, and I guess that's what I like about it as well.
A lot of times when people create in horror genre, the people who love to read what they create very often say how they feel compelled to stay with the story because there are elements in it in which they feel very close to. Do you often get that when your fans go to write reviews about your work?
Yes, and I guess that always means that in terms of the way that people review or digest something that I write, it tends to be quite polarizing because I'm looking to push a trigger or to evoke a certain type of response from something that I'm reacting to. And it means that reactions are very rarely tepid. It's either because I'm looking for the personal in me and making it as universal as I can so that similar buttons are pushed in as many people as possible in different ways, because no 2 readers are alike. I think that makes writing in this genre risky and really rewarding. And people's reactions are always fascinating. They always fascinate me. And I do read those reviews, and I do listen to what people say, because it's always about a learning experience. I don't think that I never would shoot down somebody who would react poorly to my work ever. I'm fascinated by why people don't like the things that I like. It's evolving. It's always evolving. I'm a listener. I listen to everything.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you. You have a number of books here that I'm very interested in, especially this first one called The Fallen Boys. Can you give us the premise of this particular story? And then I want to talk to you a little bit about whether or not you had a dream to create this story, or it was somewhat of a vision, something that you just kind of like fell into.
Okay, The Fallen Boys is my second novel, and it is without a doubt, I think, my favorite of my work. It came the most easily, and I think that ease was not something that came from a dream, but that was purely fueled like coal into the locomotion, into the locomotive by anger. It's a hot-blooded book. It comes from a place of anger. The basic storyline of The Fallen Boys is about a father who is trying to ascertain a couple of years after the fact why his young son committed suicide. Within the first portion of the book, a family is torn apart when a young child ends his life in quite a spectacular, semi-orchestrated fashion. And once the wreckage and the dust settles and the family buckles under the strain of having lost a child, a father with nothing else left to do, stumbles across something that he thinks is very conspicuous, which was hidden away inside one of his son's teddy bears. A USB tumbles out from the back of the stitching, and this is 4 years after his son has died, and he puts it into his computer and stumbles across a paper trail that makes him think that perhaps his son's own suicide was something that he was tricked into seeing the value of. And it becomes almost an inversion of To Catch a Predator, in which we watch a good man, a good father, perhaps evolve into a predator himself, looking for somebody. I can't go any further than that. Now, other than to say that it escalates quickly and it turns very much into a horror novel. But yeah, this is something that, unlike my other works, which things that were instigated by things that happened to me, or things that I observed, or things that were in the ozone around me, this was, this was. I hated it. To me, there is nothing worse than the exploitation of a child, and that's what this book is about. It really boils my blood, and I remember how easily influenced I was as a kid. The whole stranger danger thing has a very different shape to it now. It's not just the person in the car parked at the side of the road with a bag of lollies now. That happens in so many different avenues. There are many cars, many bags of lollies. They're online. They're all around you, and also the way in which we as individuals become so cooped up in our lives and our little problems and work and petty disputes that we fail to see the things that are happening right under our nose. And unlike my other work, this is something that was kind of this book was born from that. It was happening in the media, and I just got furious. And it started one page at a time. I didn't know where this story was going to go, and it flew out of me in a way that a work hasn't since my current work in progress.
Thank you very much for that. I am interested next in the book, which is an award-winning novel called House of Sighs. Go ahead and talk to us a little bit about how this particular seed started and what it was like for you to win an award with this book.
Okay. So, all right, let's start with the germination of the idea of this book. So I was a pizza boy so I would have been in my early 20s. I wrote this book when I was about 23, 24, and I was a pizza boy. That's how I was getting myself through university, paying my bills. I worked really hard. I was a good pizza boy. I think there's a definite way to be good at even the terrible jobs. And I really liked my customers. I got to know them. I was a delivery guy. I would go out and drop off pizzas to people's places. I come from a rural part of Australia, so I'd see the same people over and over again. And I used to have this one customer, and she was just so lovely, and she had two little kids, and they'd order once a week, and they would come to the door, knock, 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 and the kids would come running out first, and they always kind of ordered the same thing. That it was like vegetarian pizzas and things like that. As though the mother was just, even though she was treating the kids, she was a little conscious about their health, and which is something I thought was, just funny at the time. And then they got to know me by name, and, I kind of knew them. And then all of a sudden the orders just stopped coming, and I found out that that mother shot her children and killed herself. And that absolutely ripped me a new one, as we say here in Australia. It knocked me sick. So it was a peripheral experience that left me very shaken. And the house that they lived in became this metaphor that grew and grew and grew in my mind over a long period of time, in which I only ever saw things from this side of the door looking in. And I just wondered how on earth somebody could do it, B, what would make somebody do it, and how I never would have seen it. I never would have known. There was nothing that I ever saw. There was only ever happiness. There's so much that goes on. It's that whole David Lynch, what's really going on beneath the surface thing that really, I think, exists everywhere. I wonder how much we really know ourselves. And yeah, it knocked me for 6. So I was in my 3rd year at college and was doing film studies and media production, and I created a short film called Placebo, and which was kind of essentially, it's about trying to imagine what was going on inside that house, not specifically a true story, but just about how do you get to a point where you're ready to deal with that type of trauma. And it was set on Christmas Day, and it was about a family with a father who isn't in the picture, who are having a very strange Christmas luncheon, and are given a surprise by their father, and how the children deal with that within the moment. It was a short film. It was very successful. It's still shown around the world. It plays at my university all the time. It's just current. The screenplay for it has just been currently re-released. I love that this thing has had a shelf life.
Wow.
It won a bunch of awards, but it was the seed of that film and knowing that I actually could pull off something and explore those questions that bled straight into House of Size.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it definitely was. So this event that I was peripheral to, it was the film that grew out of that, and then from the film it was House of Size. And it is the evolution of an idea that still fascinates me because we still never know. And it's like, the sore tooth that you have and how you keep touching it with your tongue even though you know that it hurts and that it may not heal. You keep on toying with it regardless. Yeah. And I think the best fiction for me as a reader is when I can see that the author was obsessed with an idea about trying to explore what was actually going on there. And I don't think... And the whole idea of it being a House of Size is that there is a MacGuffin in the book in which the whole book is primarily set on a bus about somebody who is from a damaged family, who is a bus driver, who at the point of where she may or may not kill herself decides to rebuild her life with a new set of friends. It's just that these friends, they don't have a choice. They are the passengers on her bus who she kidnaps at gunpoint and is taking home with her to rebuild a new life. And that's the origin of that story. Yeah. So, but however, I'm just curious in the psychology more than anything else. Everything moves fast with my fiction. It moves fast, and I want it to be entertaining, but there's subtext galore, and I'm interested in what makes people tick.
Very interesting. I'm also now going to move over to a book called A Place for Sinners. I enjoy the cover. Whom did the cover for this particular work?
Firstly, thank you very much for commenting on the cover. A lot of work went into that. So my work is published primarily, the 3 novels were published through Sam Hain Publishing, and that was one of their staff graphic artists. One thing that was really great about Sam Hain was that I was always encouraged to be a part of the process in the development of my cover art. I do think that cover art is extraordinarily important. Yes. Anyone who thinks otherwise is kidding themselves. It matters to me as a reader. I'm a kid who grew up going to the video store and looking at those covers and thinking, yes, that is what I want to explore. So it evokes that same type of response in me. So it was one of their staff graphic designers. I was encouraged by my editor, Don Dioria, to get as involved as I could. I sketched up the original design. I'm an artist myself. I don't want to make my own covers. I think it's best to be involved, but not to go there. I just would love to. I love to collaborate. And we went through many rounds of revisions. I did the initial sketches. So that one, more than any of my other books, was my original design, and I loved watching it come to life. It's I think it has an air of that touches on all the tones that are evident in the book. It's a very emotionally driven book. It's about vulnerability. It's about being afraid. It's about being lost. And it's about being surrounded by an environment of danger. So I've got this little child in a little red dress, surrounded essentially by these jaws of rocks. So the book is essentially a survival novel, and about the externalization of someone's life manifesting in the environment around her. And the book's about killer monkeys, so
Wow.
I decided not to put a killer monkey on the cover. So I might sound all high and concept driven, but let's not mistake it. It's a book about killer monkeys.
I like that.
That works.
Yeah, I like that. Killer monkeys get a place for sinners.
Absolutely, but the spark of that story. So that story is about a young deaf girl who is from Australia. She is from actually the town of Evans Head, Australia, which is a real place, and I'm actually in it right now. I'm home visiting my parents. This is all happening at my parents' place. I'm visiting them, and she's from here, grows tired of the life here, of the smallness of the world, and her gay brother make the journey to Thailand for a holiday. And there it goes all terribly, terribly wrong. However, the genesis of that story is from my own travels. My family are from here. I have my own opinions about the small world. And when I went to Thailand, I went on one of those really, really trashy tours where I got to see wild monkeys out in the wild. And we were cautioned about, don't feed the monkeys. Don't feed the monkeys.
Right.
You're only going to do yourself damage. They're full of diseases. They turn very quickly. And anyway, we got on the boat to go out to the island. These are the Koh Phi Phi Islands, which is the most beautiful, stunning. My heart is in Thailand. I love that place. However, the need for tourism there, which drives that place, sometimes warps the beauty and the way that the tourism changes the integrity of that beauty through no fault of their own, and purely through the demand that we create by going and indulging in this type of stuff. So I was really confronted when I got on this boat and we went to this remote location, and we arrived, and the guys on the boat cranked open their coolers, and inside were bananas and bags of sweets and cans of Coke, and they're like, this stuff is for the monkeys. When you get there, give them to the monkeys and they'll come. They'll come. So we arrive, and I'm like, I'm not going to feed the monkeys. And all these boats arrived, and out came all the sugars and sweets. And the monkeys came out of the island like a tide, okay? And to those people that weren't giving the sweets, they were the targets. Why don't you have something for me? Here are generations of animals that have forgotten how to live and fend for themselves because they have their food delivered to them every morning, and now they don't know any better. And when they don't get fed, they get really, really angry and agitated, and they bite and they leap. Yep, I watched a mother reaching out to give a can of Coke to a monkey, and in her other hand she had like a 5-year-old girl, and that monkey, and she teased the monkey with it, "Were you going to do it? Are you going to do it?" And that monkey went straight for the little girl, and it was the most horrifying thing I'd ever seen. So it blows my mind that people would do this. But however, there's a mentality when you travel, which is, oh, you're here, you're going to do it, you're only going to be here once, let's give it a shot. Well, yeah, what if that went completely and utterly wrong? And of course, I got a point to make, and it's a point that I made only through discovering it myself. And it's all in A Place for Sinners. So, yeah, killer monkeys. And there are other secrets on this island as well, which also play into the idea of the damage that we, as well-intentioned tourists, the effect that we can have on an ecosystem and on the people who live there. And there are secrets on this island beyond the monkeys. So yeah, it's a dark book.
That's what you write. That's and we talked earlier before I brought you on about the fact that psychology works such a huge force in this particular kind of works. If you are not disturbed by A Place for Sinners, there probably is something wrong with you.
I actually want that on a t-shirt that I can wear to conventions. Okay.
If you're not disturbed,
People thought I was disturbed because Night of the Living Dead didn't disturb me at 6 years old. So
You are disturbed.
I don't know.
We're just going to put that out there.
Well, thank you. Recognition is always appreciated.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We're
Let's
gonna
join the ring. All of us group hug. We're all disturbed together. Okay, it's a circle of trust. and then we all nervously step out of shot.
I know, just kind of like
disturbingly appropriate.
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna go over to another book that you have here, and I love the title of this, and the way that the black and white. The way the cover is and all of that, it draws you in. The title of the book is And the Night Growled Back. Talk to me about this work.
Okay, again, another fantastic cover from the Sam Hain crew. This is a novella that I wrote, and it, again, was drawn from one of my own travels. I travel a lot. It is something that gives me great pleasure in life. It keeps me perpetually bankrupt, and I'm always in the state of almost being homeless, but wherever I go, I can always find a piece of paper and a pen, and that's all I need to be happy, and maybe food, but anyway, that's besides the point. I went to Iceland, which is where this book is set, and it is about three or four people who go to a fair in the Icelandic landscape, which actually happens, this event, and whilst there, one of them gets a little hot-headed when somebody makes a pass at his girlfriend and absolutely knocks somebody out. This person hits the ground and dies. These type of random, drunken, alcohol-induced attacks is something that is on the Australian news a lot. They call them king hits or coward's punches. It happens, unfortunately, too much here in Australia. A mixture of booze and just the need to put your macho stamp by decking somebody from behind. So somebody who does this, and they're quite innocent friends, they, under pressure from this guy, go on the run, and they retire not knowing what to do at the relative's place to one of these people in a cabin. And this cabin actually exists. I've stayed there. It's at the base of a volcano. Iceland is an amazing place. It is that black and white, monochromatic, I'm on the moon type of landscape. And then you turn a corner and it's like Lord of the Rings, and it's ridiculously eclectic. It's an amazing place. And anyway, and they retire at this place in the middle of the night, and there's something out there. I'm always interested in the MacGuffin, that Hitchcocky MacGuffin that gets you somewhere. Because if there is one thing that I know my stuff is, and that I'm proud that people react this way, is that it's unpredictable. And I love to plant a seed that I fuel in your mind and then pull the rug out from underneath you, and then it's going to be something completely different. Now, I will actually give a little bit of a spoiler with, and then I grab back. I was told when I was in Iceland by a relative of mine that there was a polar bear that swam from Greenland and arrived at on the Icelandic shore and was shot dead climbing out of the ocean and trying to swim into the Icelandic river stream. And I thought that was incredible. And so all of these factors came together in my mind, and this story was born. It's a nasty story, it's quick, it's to the point, but like a lot of my stuff, it's an amalgamation of ideas that were floating around like spaceships, and then they just docked. And when they dock, it gives me this little chill, and I'm like, yes, that's what I need to write about. And that's what I did with this one.
Very cool. All right. So Scott, mute your mic, please. So I'm thinking where I would like to go with this. You have a very diverse background when it comes to being able to travel and be mobile. How does this play into your creative ability.
Yeah. I think that people should always write about what they're passionate about the things that move you. I think I can tell when I try to write something that isn't about me. I think my fiction feels a bit more hollow, and that's why it never goes anywhere. It stays in that little to-be-burned pile, that kindling. I can sense it in other writers' work. Write what you know is that old adage, and I think that there is value eternally in that. So, however, wherever I go, and I do travel a lot, I am forever inspired. I've always been that kid who is watching everything, who will quietly sit back and see how things unfold. And I'm always looking wherever I go. So I'm always inspired by the places that I travel to. I could happily write about the United States and just use the Wikipedia pages and Google searches to get me through it. And I'm sure I can tell a story, but not a story that has any grit to it.
Right.
And I like grit. I like the smell of a place. I like the texture of a place.
Yes.
I like the way that people talk. I'm fascinated by things. I really think that you don't have to be from a place to write about a place, but I do believe that there is great value in having been there and experienced it. And I make myself fall in love through curiosity with all the places that I go to, wherever I am, even if it's my own environment, looking at it through new eyes. And inserting all of these details into everything that I write and into the backgrounds of the people that I write about. There's a character in House of Size who is American, and she's from Oregon. She's from Astoria, and I happened to just drive through that place on a day trip out of Seattle. I was living in Canada, and I come across on the Greyhound and rented a car, and I went exploring, and I just stumbled across this little place, and I was like, this place is just beautiful and spectacular. And I wandered around all day, and there are things there that I noticed, and I wrote one of the characters' backgrounds. She was from that town, but there were little details that I wouldn't have got otherwise, and like the color of the fire hydrants, the smell of the water, and the
Right.
bird waste that was coming off these gigantic rocks, the smell of salt and the way it was in the rind of houses, and the way people spoke, and about the way that the geography sloped up and down. And I just wandered around this town, and I found where the Goonies was shot, and I was completely had a little nerd out, and I incorporated that into the book as well. That she kind of, and I asked a couple of people, well, what do you think about where the Goonies was shot? And they're like, we all think it's a little bit embarrassing, but we're happy that it brings people here. And I wrote that philosophy into the book as well. So I think you should always, as a writer, strive to enrich everything that you can with a little bit of truth, even if it's not your truth, because it goes a long way into creating suspension disbelief. Because once you create a world and your reader trusts that world,
Right.
I think you're completely justified in destroying it, and whatever reaction that elicits in the reader is generally merited. I think there's a massive difference between stuff that's hollow and stuff that's crammed full of substance, and I like reading that. I like world building. I like setting. Setting is something that I really love in books. I just recently read such a fantastic book. I was blown away by it. It was by Malcolm McDowell, who we all know used to write Beetlejuice and episodes from Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side. And the book was called The Elementals, and it was set on, in the South, on the Keys, and just that sense of place there. I felt like I've been there. I feel like I've been there. And then I've subsequently read a few more of his books. I'm reading his Blackwater series, and they've got a way of speaking. The place has got a sense of temperature. It's got a smell to it, and it's got an atmosphere of dread to it. And that comes from not being hollow. Stephen King's work has this. I had this image in my mind of what America was like coming from Australia, and it was beautiful vistas and rabid dogs. But however, and that's simplifying things drastically.
Right.
But it felt real to me. And when I went to the States, I went, do you know what? I'm going to take myself to Maine and I'm going to see what it's like. And I went there, and it was a fascinating experience as a reader to go to a place where that you had developed over many, many years in your mind. It was fascinating, and it was moving, and it was confusing, and I loved it. And that's something that you don't really get from any other medium. You know what I mean? Like it was.
Right.
So I love world building, and I'm not talking about, well, I'm not a fantasy writer, but I love the idea of world building. I love it when I do read fantasy. I love a sense of reality, and I love that in horror fiction as well. And I really try hard to do that. And if nothing else, I know that I do, because once you've laid out the football field, then the war can begin between the two sides, and that's something that's I find rewarding as a reader as well. So that's what I love to do.
All right, I'm going to let Scott Pearson get in and ask his first question. Go ahead, Scott.
Bring it on, Scott.
Wondering, really quick before I ask I've got several questions that I want to ask, but you said that you went into New England with Stephen King expectations. Were you disappointed or were you surprised?
All right, so I went in with my partner. My partner, who's not a horror fan, was thinking, what are you doing here, Aaron? Why are we here? So from that perspective, there was a lot of disappointment there. But for me, no. If I was just a reader and not a writer, perhaps it would be disappointing, because there are no clowns lurking in the sewers. The town of Jerusalem's Lot and Castle Rock does not exist. However, I could see the little sparks of inspiration that had popped up, the little geography that had popped up and does exist in his fiction, and I stumbled across it. And I thought, for me, it's not about nerding out. It's about looking for the sparks of inspiration that help an author hone their craft, and the little tricks that you can insert into your work that you draw from reality that imbue your fiction with a sense of grounded, something that's grounded. I could see that. And it was inspiring. So was I going there expecting to see and hear things? To some degree I did, but to another degree, of course, I could write about my hometown and make it sound amazing, but you'd come here and you go, wow, there's a Chinese takeaway store. There is there's a pub. I'm from a small town called Branxton originally, and Branxton, street for street, is the town of James Bridge in my first novel. Hello, little cat. I've got a dog running around out here. We can have an online
He's not
fight.
so little.
Not so little.
He's 5 months old and bigger than his mama.
Oh, well, that's what happens when you buy a lion. But yeah, I'm interested in that, and I've done it with my own fiction. I thinly disguise my own environments into a fictionalized context. I didn't find it disappointing. I found it weirdly inspiring when it comes to Maine and New England. It was an interesting place.
Carrying on the inspiration theme, we can tell everything that inspired King. I've got kind of a holy trinity of Rod Serling, Ray Bradbury, and George Romero as my kind of holy trinity of inspiration to start writing. Who would yours be?
Oh, my holy trinity. Well, it would be Robert Bloch. From a similar circle there. His work entranced me as a kid. I have tracked down every one of his novels and short story collections. If my house burnt down, I would take my Bloch collection with me. And then on top of that would be somebody along the lines of Stephen King, because that was a massive gateway for me. And then it would have to be someone like Steven Spielberg, I guess. But my trinity is continuously expanding, and it crosses from fiction to non-fiction to film. Like I'm nothing without Toby Hooper. Even bad Toby Hooper, I'm nothing. When I'm hitting a wall in my fiction and I'm looking at that computer screen and I'm slumming it like somebody trying to drag themselves out of quicksand, and I need that inspirational hit, like that Pulp Fiction style adrenaline to the heart, I will chuck on a Toby Hooper film, and I will just get this electric jolt that comes out of the sensibility there that is in my fiction. House of Size is basically, it's got literary aspirations told through the lens of a Toby Hooper film, and all my stuff is like that. So I guess Toby Hooper is another one. So I don't have a trinity. I've got a quadrilogy, and then it's continuously expanding out. But and then there are young. It's never limited, but it's interesting. I hear other people from my generation talk about their holy trinities and the people who really got them into reading and writing. And there are, another generation stepped down from your Bradburys and your Blocks and your Mathesons. However,
Cartman.
that was the ghost of Robert Bloch applauding us just a little too enthusiastically.
Damn cat.
Yeah, it was that cat. I tell you what, they grow up quick, and it's
He's
like
a
that.
main character. He's got that Lion King attitude. He just can't wait to be king.
I just can't wait. Little Simba in the making. But yeah, the ghost of Robert Bloch and your cat distracted me from my train of thought. But yeah, I have inspirations. Yeah, it's back. My inspirations are always evolving. Always evolving. There are people from my own generation and the generations above me that are really fuel me on.
All right. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Scott, go ahead and mute your mic. And do something with that damn cat. All right, so we're going to go, let's see, where are we going to take you? It's really important to be able to create a great cast of characters when you are going to write any book. But for you, how do you go about assembling your characters? Do they do sort of a meet and greet, or do you go ahead and pick parts from other people and places to be able to attach to the character before you begin?
I do a combination of the two. Let's take something. So House of Size and A Place for Sinners, they have an ensemble cast. The Fallen Boys is far more self-contained. For my ensembles, I tend to think of it. All right. House of Size is set primarily on a bus, and I really thought through the creative development of me being at the back seat of that bus, looking down the avenue, like down the aisle, and watching these people step on. And they all came on board, and they all had blurred faces. And as they sat down, I managed to walk around and kind of look at who they were. And I could see that it was a combination of people that I already knew, people that I didn't want to know, and social constructs. Okay, so yeah, and the people who were social constructs, I went, that's too obvious. You have to be incorporated into these people, because I don't want my fiction to come across as preachy, even though it generally does have a hell of a lot of subtext. And there were people who were on that bus that I realized who were getting on there. Then I'm like, I don't want to hang out with you at all. You're a bully. You are somebody that I went to school with who really treated me badly. And then there's somebody who I was like, I love that person. I haven't seen them in ages. And then they started to chatter a little bit, and obviously because of the dynamic, some people don't get along. That's the friction. That is the dramatic tension that is in House of Size, and without that happening, the book doesn't work. Because whilst my book does have villains or anti-villains, it doesn't sustain itself within the confines of a bus unless those people interact in a naturalistic way.
Right.
We have we have the and there's also a point to be driven home. House of Size really ends up evolving into a really strong argument about what it means to assert your masculinity within a confined space at the risk of making yourself look like an idiot, and through hurting somebody. It is about how people don't like other people on the basis of their sexual orientation or where they're from. And so these were the social constructs that took on the faces of people that I actually knew. And then there were people that I knew. There was somebody that I worked with when I was stacking shoes as a teenager, and I was just entranced by this woman. She was in her mid-50s, and she used to refer to herself as this Kip Nana, and I just loved this person. And she emerged. She stepped on that bus, and more than anyone else I've ever written about in my life, she's there. And I'm terribly embarrassed because I ran into her one time later on in really, and I couldn't. I'm like, I killed you. I murdered you terribly in House of Sides. It's a very awkward thing when you do cross paths with the people that you inspire. And you think to yourself, I have dreamt a very dark end for you, but that's the good thing about working within a niche. But yeah, it's a combination of many things, but it can never not be deliberate, because if it's not deliberate, then I think the dramatic tension begins to fade. And that's the technicality of the writing there, which I always think about, because I'm always thinking about what a reader is going to take away from this at any one given moment. I don't write just for myself. I write to gratify myself, but I write always with the reader in mind. So if these characters aren't interesting enough, they're gone.
Right. I'm Scott, mute your mic. I don't know why we're getting that kind of feedback from that, but it's what it is tonight. All right, so you have a number of illustrations that are behind you that I find absolutely fascinating. You bring that perspective to your work. Talk a little bit about what it is to be in your mind and draw things such as what you have behind you.
I have drawn since I was a kid. I used to teach myself to draw from laying out strips of butcher's paper that my uncle used to bring home, and I'd get crayons and I'd get my Ninja Turtle toys, little figurines, and I'd sit them on the butcher's paper, and I'd cast a light against them, and I'd get this long drawn out shadow across that piece of paper, and I would draw the outline around that shadow and then take the toy away. And then what I would have is this silhouette, and then I would fill the silhouette with my own creations. That's how I taught myself to draw.
Wow.
And I treat writing the same way, where I do see the shadows that are cast around me, and sometimes the shadow is from, as we mentioned before, something that made me angry, or something that moved me, or someone who touched me in a really beautiful way, and I see that shadow and then I imbue it with something of my own. So I guess when it comes to illustrating or painting and writing, it comes from a place of observation, and that doesn't end the moment that the painting has your little signature on it in the bottom, or when the book is on the shelf. It happens as well when people look at it or read it and they tell you what they think, and they tell you what works and what doesn't work. The way to be a good communicator, which is really what it all comes down to, regardless of whatever the medium you're choosing, because I have a background in social work, media production, illustration, and writing, is the ability to communicate a message. And you can shout your message at someone, but you have to make sure that they hear it, and then you have to listen. So that process, that observation, it doesn't end the moment that you're done. So it's about looking at the world. And I guess I look at the world through a certain perspective, and that's what makes my voice different from other people. But it's purely about observing, and to be honest, it's about sharing a part of yourself. And I think that people who are brave enough, authors or illustrators, filmmakers who are brave enough to put some of their own sensibility, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own self-hatred, their own love, their own history into whatever silhouette they're feeling. I just think it's more interesting. I think it's more interesting. I think it makes reading and watching things more diverse, and because I like hearing different people's voices from different countries, different genders, different sexual orientations, men, women, and all the different incarnations as, in between. I just think it's more interesting. I think people should strive to be interesting if you're going to communicate something, and because if not, you don't stand a chance.
Absolutely. All right, we're getting to that point now where I want you to go ahead and give me your links. So if you've got social media of any kind, go ahead and throw that out there for us so that we may know how to find you.
Absolutely. The absolute best way to get in touch with me, and I would love to hear from people, is through my website, www.aarondries.com. Hit me up on Facebook. I'm very easy to find. I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I am on Pinterest. I am here, and if you want, feel free to come and visit. But a nice way to kind of touch base with all of that is through my website. I've got a YouTube channel as well. I'd make my own trailers, short films, and I'm on every social media platform that you can think of. But hit me up through Facebook or Twitter. That's the most effective way to do it. And just Google me on Amazon, follow the links, or it's all there on my website.
All right, the next part of the interview, and we have at least 5 minutes left, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Ready? All right.
Very.
What is your favorite word?
Don't.
What is your least favorite word?
Don't. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I guess it's the contrast that and the tug and pull between those two, love and hate. That is probably the metaphor there, I guess.
What turns you on emotionally?
Honesty.
What turns you off?
Honesty.
What turns you off?
Hatred.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of my bedroom. And I don't have one because I'm always floating around. So I guess that's about desire.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I hate the sound of people telling me lies, because it has a tone, it has a sound to it, and it's always obvious. And whilst it's fascinating, it makes my skin crawl.
Other than being an author, what profession would you choose?
I already have that profession, and I love it. It is in the advocacy of the elderly and people who live with a disability.
What profession?
I guess so. It would be community services, I guess.
Wonderful. What profession would you not like to do?
I don't want to work in retail again. I've had enough. I've done my time. I've done my time. Would you like to hear a very, very quick retail story? When I was working in apparel in a department store, there was a yellow car chamois that, you know, it was yellow, it's plastic, and inside is a sponge that you use to wash your car. And there was one of those and was sitting on top of the changing room, and I had a feather duster, which was my job to go through and clean the changing room. And I was like, what is that up there? And I flicked it with my feather duster, and it fell down and it cracked open on my head and was full of urine. Okay, I decided on that day that some people are just disgusting, and I'm not working in retail again. So, in a word, retail.
Absolutely. All right. So, and my last question to you: if heaven exists, what would you like God to say to you when you arrive?
You weren't always right, Aaron, but at least you managed to have a good time. That's all I can hope. I don't want someone to wash everything away. I'm okay with my flaws. I just want them to say you gave it a good shot and be proud of all of the stuff that was wrong, because I'm just an accumulation of mistakes and always will be. And I guess that's beautiful in its own way.
Absolutely. All right, we are up at the top of the hour, and it is time for us to say our goodbyes. We appreciate your time with us, and we do hope that you will stop by again if you enjoyed
I would love
what we've had for you this evening. I would, at this point, like to have Scott say his final comment and or goodbyes so that we may go on with our next hour.
Well, Aaron, it has been fantastic. I only have one quickie question for you before I say goodnight. What was your first exposure to horror? What got you hooked? Was it a movie, a book? Which one?
It was a movie, and it was Salem's Lot. Well, it was actually a television miniseries, and it was Salem's Lot. My grandfather showed it to me at way too young an age. I will never forget the image of that scratching at that window. It gave me nightmares for forever, and I don't ever want to see floating children with that dead glaze ever again.
Oh, the hair's up on my neck. I know the scene well.
Whoa.
Aaron, it's been a blast. Thank you for coming on, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to be going on to our next hour, second hour with guest Mark Tufo. And let's see, is he in? Yes, he is. Hi.
Yep.
Unmute your mic so we can hear you. All right. Mark, you have to unmute your mic, hun. Fiddle around down there and look for, I don't know if he's coming in on a laptop or if he's coming in with his, there you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I've never been on Google Plus before.
We got you.
Yeah, I do everything on Skype. I'm sorry.
No, Skype is yucky. Yucky. I stopped using Skype about almost a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit more than that, because there was so much white noise in the background. It was stepping on everybody's signal, and I said, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, we've had some problems, Armand and I, on our show where like this random clicking just comes in throughout the whole show, and it's like, what the heck is that all about?
Yeah, so you might want to decide to check out Google Hangouts for I think it's
Armand Toof's Dead Time Podcast.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. Hey, I'm sorry, I don't have a webcam. I'm on my PC, and I just don't have one.
That's all right. Don't worry about that. I'm still going to put you up on the main screen here. I have with me before we head into your interview, I have Scott Pearson, head of all things green in our research department, to say hi to you.
Hey, Scott. Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
All right, Scott, go ahead and mute your mic while we get our interview started with Mark Tufo. All right, so you are pretty sought after for interviews and all of that kind of fun stuff, but in the beginning, before your fame and fortune,
yeah, there you go, the Tufo money.
Right, yeah, that big bucks. You
right.
created a character by the name of Mike Talbot. And when you did that, you created your first in, at that point you didn't know it was going to be a series, but this first book. And you then took that work and you put it in your garage for a number of years until about 2009, and then you brought it out. How did that happen? How did you make Mike Talbot?
Well, there's a whole genesis here. I'll do the whole nuts and bolts if you want. I started to write Indian Hill way back in college, and we're going many moons ago. And I was just writing it because it sounded fun, and I just came up with the name Mike Talbot, and it loosely based him on myself and went with it, and then wrote about 2/3 of the story, like I said, and then just forgot about it. Like a normal kid back in his 20s, you start 10,000 things and don't finish any of them. So then crap, what was it, about 2008 or so, 2009, I guess? You probably know more than I do, but I was actually looking for a tool, a part to work on my Jeep, and I pulled this big box down. I found this old big sheaf of yellowing, curled papers, handwritten pages. I'm like, what is this? And, I read the story, and I was like, wow, I really need to know what happens next. So I just finished the story to, it was honestly without any intention of ever putting it out there. I wrote it so that I would know what happened in the story.
You put it out there, and you were looking for a home for it.
Tracy, my wife, who's obviously the brains behind the outfit, but she shopped it everywhere. Yeah, I wasn't holding out much hope. It was very raw. It was unedited. It was not very professional, and it was my first stab at this, and but she shopped it everywhere. And then it was kind of back then, the whole indie thing was kind of new, putting a book up on Amazon. We got a crappy stock image cover and put it up there, and honest to God, Jackie, it was just cool to be like, I've got a book on Amazon, and so that was kind of cool. It didn't sell squat, nothing, zero, and I didn't care. I wasn't going like, I'm a professional writer, this is what I'm gonna do. I just wrote it to finish it, and then I got so excited about writing that first book that I blew through and wrote Indian Hill 2, and then even part of the third one until the steam kind of blustered out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a break from this whole crazy writing thing. And then what the hell happened? Life happened. I started working again, and then got laid off again, all stressed out, and I was like, I need to start writing because that helps with stress, and that's actually when Zombie Fallout was born. And I'm like, well, I've already got this character. I know Mike. I know kind of his foibles. I know all his little idiosyncrasies. I'm just gonna go with Mike. What the hell? Nobody reads my stuff, and that was never the intention anyway. So I wrote Mike in the future, his later years, like I was then, So I just continued on, and then it started to catch hold, and people were like, why do you have Mike in a science fiction book and then have Mike in a zombie book? And I had to create this whole back lore of how that happened and the genesis behind it, and so that became its whole own entity. It got much bigger than I had ever intended it to get, but it's been a ride. It's funner than hell.
It's been said that you have a way of creating characters that will make your reader both laugh and then become thoroughly horrified by. What do you attribute that ability to?
God, I'd love to say it was the 15 years of schooling I had for writing, but I've said it before, whether it's true or not, whether it's cutting hairs or whatever. I don't consider myself a great author. I consider myself a pretty good storyteller. I feel like if we were sitting around a campfire, I could keep people intrigued, and I think that's how my books come across. We're all out camping and the fire's going, and we all got a beer and we're roasting marshmallows and stuff, and I'm telling you a story as opposed to I don't know. I read some books. I'm like, oh my God, that's a great author. And I don't know. I just I infuse the people around me and some of their qualities and traits, and I think that comes out in the stories.
You're able to bring out a good work and allow someone to enjoy it so much that they are intrigued to keep seeing the story go on and on and on and on. Now, I saw that Indian Hill has 5 in that particular series. Have you finished that, or is it something that might carry on?
Oh God, Jackie, I wish I could end a friggin' series. I can't do it to apparently save my life. I don't know what my fucking problem is. Indian Hill was going to be a trilogy. I actually, after the third book, I had a very, what I felt a conclusive ending, and I liked it. I was happy with it. It wasn't this giant cliffhanger where people like, Tufo, you suck, finish the story. And but people, Indian Hill really started to catch on. It didn't have much of a following, but then more and more people were like, hey, man, we would really love to see you keep writing books in this series. And I was like, oh, what the hell? So I wrote 4. It was received well from the folks that liked the series. I wrote 5. That even got a bigger audience. And then Audible came in, and they were like, hey, we really like your Indian Hill series. Do you want to write a 6? I'm like, sure, I'll write a 6. So I'm actually writing 6 and 7. Will that be, it's funny, Jack, I just had somebody last night go, I need to know when your series are going to end because I don't want to start another series that's not done. And I wrote back to her, and I'm like, God, I wish I had an answer for you. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know when I'm going to end any particular series. I guess when it's not fun to write anymore. That's the only answer I can truthfully give.
There are a lot of... Scott, go ahead and mute your mic. There are a lot of...
That's not me. I was muted.
Yeah, he was muted. I saw the little thingy.
I don't know where I'm coming off at. Okay. So it's not... hey, it's no more talking me in the background. All right, so... And every time that happens, I get distracted, and I really just makes me want to climb a wall. All right, so your revision process. Do you revise heavily, a little, or not at all?
Oh, that whole thing has been a process. At first, it was like I wrote a book, and I turned around and just dropped it on the internet, and that was probably the biggest mistake, and I've told everybody that will listen that's asked me that question, is like, clean it up, make it as good a story, grammatically correct as you possibly can. I don't care who the book is. There's no such thing as a perfect book, but you want to try to achieve that level. Yeah, let's see. I write the book, so obviously first draft. Then I go through it again, second draft. I send it to the editor. I get it back, third draft. I send it to betas. I don't even know what I'm at right now. Fourth, fifth draft, and then it goes back to the editor, and I do another draft. So minimum there are 5 sets of rewrites go into any of my books.
All right.
Yeah, it takes longer. The revision process takes longer than actually writing the book.
The importance of the first line. We often talk on this show about the importance of the first paragraph, but I have since narrowed it down to the first line. And I'm very interested in moving over to your Zombie Fallout series since it's pretty popular. What was it for you that inspired your first line in that particular series, and why?
I'll be honest, I don't even know what the first line is. I kind of get a rough idea. But the Zombie Fallout series, I very much like zombies. I didn't write about them because it was hot or I knew they'd sell. It was like I thoroughly enjoy zombies. It's a genre I love to read. I love to watch. And the very first paragraph was literally something I would run through. The very first chapter was something I would run through in my head before I go to bed. It was an exercise of what I would do at the very onset of a zombie attack. And literally, everything I was like, well, screw it, I'm just going to write this down. And then that was how Zombie Fallout was born. I wrote that first chapter because I've been thinking about it for probably a year and a half, and then everything else grew organically from that.
I'd like you, Mr. Tufo, to describe your writing style in 5 words or less.
Chaotic, unstructured, seat of my pants. We'll go with seat of my pants.
What writing technique have you found useful within, let's say, the last year or so that helps you become more productive?
Writing style. I probably do a stream of consciousness with. I've been chewed up by editors so much. I do have a stream of consciousness, but I try to keep all the thousands of rules that they've instilled into my head as I'm writing. So it's a cleaned up version of stream of consciousness, I guess, would probably the best I can give you. I don't know. It's almost a fugue state, to be honest with you.
And that's appropriate, I think, for this style of writing.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, so we're moving on now to the topic of dialogue. The integrity and truth contained in dialogue is what ultimately draws the reader in to the narrative. Talk about the importance for you of dialogue.
This is probably where, you're either going to really dig my stuff or you're not. I really try to make the dialogue be as natural as if you were with people you know, or you were interacting with X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of just the way that I approach it. I try to make it as natural as possible.
Sometimes, so when we speak in natural cadence, it tends to give some people hiccups. And they don't appreciate the rawness of it.
No, my editors sure don't.
What do you do when your editor comes to you and says, I need more emphasis on, and whatever it is?
Yeah, it's oh my gosh, I've had more problems with editors. When you have problems with the first and second editor, you can kind of say, well, it's the editor, and then when you get down to the third or fourth editor, then it kind of like, oh, maybe I'm the asshole, so I think it's me because I'm a control freak. And then just trying to find that right relationship, where they see your vision and they want to improve that, instead of kind of like, no, you can't do any of that. We have to do it this way because that's the way Grammar 901 says. If I agree with them, then I'll switch it up and give them what they're looking for. We don't always agree. I don't think you should always agree, but that's it's a give and take. And I'm working with an editor now that I feel good about, and I'm hoping this relationship lasts, and this is it, and I don't have to keep this stupid quest going for an editor that probably doesn't exist that keeps me friggin' sane.
How do you build characters that have integrity?
That's a good question. I take examples from real life. I take folks that I know, and I'll kind of build on them and tweak some things and give them a kind of a life of their own. And I think I danced all around the answer, but it's in there somewhere.
We're going to move now over to irony. So the subject is irony. The question is, irony is, well, it's more of a statement. It's a literary device that is used often in background when it comes to characters. It's a intimate method, a way to be able to get information to the reader kind of behind the scenes and allow them to fill in some of the blanks that perhaps they were missing. How do you go about achieving this in your works?
Most of my stories, not all, but most of them are written first-person narrative through the journal of Mike Talbot. And you get a very, very in-depth look into his life because he's constantly telling us his thoughts on any subject, and then even the tangents when he's in a particular area or a subject or in trouble. And that's how I get to that point with those. And it's definitely a different process when I go to the third person stories. You have to describe everything, but it's almost easier with the first person because Mike can just lay everything out for you.
All right, so apocalyptic stories include death of humanity very often. What is it like for you as an author to walk that fine line?
I enjoy it. Those are stories I've enjoyed, whether it's through a science fiction or a apocalyptic type event. I don't, I guess I'm removed from it because I'm more the overseer of it. I've got a series, Tim. It's about a zombie clown. It's a zombie invasion through his eyes, and it's a pretty deeply disturbed book. And people look at me like, dude, I can't believe you wrote that. And then I just, it was a story I told. It's not a life I live, and I'm just removed from it, so it doesn't affect me. It's even people like, oh, I can't eat when I read some of your stuff. It's so graphic, and while I'm sitting there eating a hamburger while I'm writing it, so it doesn't bother me at all.
All right, we're going to, let's see, what are we going to do? All right, you're a very prolific author, and I'm curious about this particular question with you. How many words approximately did it take for you to become a recognized, qualified author?
I don't know. There's some that probably will never think I get to that point. I guess we'll go with when I could call writing a career. I was close to 1 million words in. Yeah, easily. Yeah,
All
right, hovering right around there.
We're going to go to the next subject of, I get a lot of people that think that, oh, he's an author, she's an author. What could it be so difficult to do this? Talk to me when you are in full author mode and you're working on a deadline. How many hours do you actually put in a day or a week, if you want to do that? And what is it like for you when you're working a deadline?
Most of my deadlines up until recently have been self-imposed, and I'm sure you know because you are, but being your own boss sucks because you're a taskmaster and you're constantly driving yourself. It's harder to work for yourself than it is for the man. Because you do for the man, you do your 40, you walk away and go have a Miller, or whatever.
Right.
When you work for yourself, man, there is always shit to do. But recently, because I signed that deal with Audible, and now I do have true deadlines, and that's terrifying. But in a typical week, it's not just writing, but everything that goes with it, the revisions, the social media, the emails, everything. It's easily 80 to 100 hours a week, easy.
All right, you hear that, people? This is definitively not something that you can just go and willy-nilly with it. If you're serious about what you're doing, especially once you've become recognized, it's very important for you to be able to have the wherewithal to be able to concentrate on what you're doing and allow for yourself to be able to stay on task. And a lot of this is alone time. What do you do with all of the seclusion that has to come in when you're creating like this?
I'm a very private person anyway. I'd rather not be out in a crowd, so that's not overly difficult. It's my wife that will hey man, we need to go out. You need to get out. We need to go do something. Get out from under the hovel. I just like to add back onto that other part that with people that want to try to take on this career, which good luck to you. I wish you nothing but the best. But my wife, who works behind the scenes, and actually even more so in front now, she's getting more in front, but she actually puts in more hours than I do for this whole beast, if you want to call it Tufo Enterprises or whatever. But so there is the man hours in this house, to keep the machine chugging is difficult. Because I've talked to so many people that think, hey, I wrote a book, I'm going to make $1 million, and that's, man, good luck. I mean, if you pull it off, man, tell me how you did it, but that ain't the way it works.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go back to character development again, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
Besides the main characters and usually an antagonist, how much character development should go into the supporting cast?
Everything, as much as you put into the initial characters. I mean, everybody loves, you got Rick Grimes, everyone, you love him, you hate him. Glenn, you love him, you hate him, but you want all these other peripheral characters to have their own lives too. I did a poll a couple years back on, like, who's your favorite character, and Mike Talbot didn't win. It was a tie between him and another character, BT, Big Tiny, and Henry the dog came in at third, and Tracy was. I mean, people love or hate the characters depending on how you set them up. I think you want to have a very strong cast. I think it just makes the story better.
Thank you for that. All right, so how much do you feel instinct goes into character development?
I think everything. I mean, I think you have to be an observer of the. I don't want to go too philosophical because I'm not that deep, but you got to see the human condition. The types of people that are all around you, and some of the traits, like, and then what would they do in super stressful situations? Would they become the uber ass? Would they rise above? And you just want to take traits that we all know are out there and infuse them into your characters.
Thank you for that. All right, now we know that you have more than just 2 series, so I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever gotten partway through a novel and decided to change from main character or any of the other primary characters that go along with it? If so, why and where?
The only series, okay, with Zombie Fallout, you meet a character early on, Mrs. Deneau. She's kind of ambiguous. She's got a very small part. She doesn't do much. But as the series goes on, she becomes like just this super ass, and you just kill her, died. People are like, how are you going to get rid of this? She needs to go away. And, so it's fun to develop them as they go along. Even Mike's best friend in the series, Zombie Fallout, BT, he's not even really in Volume 1. Again, he's just kind of a side character that showed up when they were out trying, going on a supply run, and then he just, as 2 and 3 and 4 go on, he becomes this huge character. And then even I got a series that, well, it's not really a series yet because it's only 1 book, but Distance, which I hope to make into a trilogy. I got a character in there. I was halfway through the book, and this character just sprouted out of my head, and I had to literally go back and rewrite the entire first half of the book to introduce her into it and make her an integral component.
All right.
How much of your writing is actually done by you, and how much is done by your characters?
All of it's done by the characters.
I love it. Method writing.
Yeah. They really do. I would love to. I've talked to authors before. I would love to tell you that I spend about a month or 2 months and I storyboard the whole thing out, and I got it all figured out, how it's laid out, what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna write. I have no effing clue what I'm gonna write until I sit down at that computer and they tell me what they want to do. Yeah. Not the easiest method. I'm sure you know that. But
in a way, it kind of is.
Oh, I'll tell you, man.
It's schizophrenic, but it's fun.
It's fun. It's fun because people will tell me, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." It's like, "Well, you didn't see it coming because I didn't see it friggin' coming." I had no idea it was gonna play out like that. And I dig that. But sometimes, I sit there and look at my monitor and the blinking cursor and well, what am I gonna do today? And until they decide to give me a voice, sometimes it can be a little tough, and then sometimes it just takes off. I'm writing like a madman.
Sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
Mute your mic. Because you're screwing my groove tonight. I don't understand why you're doing that, and I just mute it. I don't know, cats and all of that, but those were really good questions, and so I do appreciate that. All right, so it's relatively easy to pen a book. I mean, you can write about anything, right? But it's not necessarily easy to pen something that people all over the world enjoy reading. What was it that you finally hit onto that said, I've got my niche and I know what I'm going to do?
Again, I'm not ragging on anybody's stuff. There is so much zombie fiction I've read, and I love every friggin' word of it. The only what I see with mine is that they're regular people. They're just an average guy trying to protect his family. He's not Rambo. He doesn't have a tank in his basement parked there for the apocalypse. He doesn't have flamethrowers and Uzis and he's got his shotgun. He's got some cool rifles and stuff, but that's about it. I think that's the chord that strikes with people that these are just regular people that just got caught in a shitstorm and they're trying to make their way through it.
I enjoy the fact that you use, as you say, regular people, and that we get to watch how someone evolves during this process. Also, we get to watch you evolve. How has your perspective changed since your initial creation of your first work till now?
I write better. I think I've been told that they can see the progression from Zombie Fallout 1 to Zombie Fallout 9. It's got, I hate to say polished because I don't really like that adverb, but it's got a cleaner feel, and but with that comes a pressure too, because you don't want to drop a book on there and people are like, wow, that was a turd, and you'd never want that to happen.
Right.
It goes back. I guess they're more professional. I kind of know more what I'm doing, the mistakes not to make, or not make as much, that kind of thing.
Let's talk about going back to characters, because you do this so well. I'm interested in 3 things that you feel are integral to character building. I mean, just across the board. What do they need to have?
They have to be human. You don't want caricatures. You don't over the top, muscle bar. Whatever. Any particular person, you don't want them to go so far overboard. You want them to be flawed. Everybody's flawed. We all have our foibles. We all do stupid things at the wrong time. Oh my gosh, just natural, I guess, would be another thing. How would they react in any particular situation? And personally, I in very stressful situations, I like humor, and so that bleeds out into the stories, and that might be a niche that people enjoy about my books too. Is like, here they are in the midst of this attack, and things are going sour fast, and Mike or BT will say something just totally off the wall, and you're like, oh, okay, a little relief, and then it and that helps too, because I've brought you to a laugh, so you're up, and then all of a sudden you come crashing down because somebody just got bit, and so you're riding that roller coaster.
Very much like a musical score is to a film. You need to have that ebb and flow within your written work too. It allows for the person to catch their breath and take an assessment of what just happened.
Oh yeah, perfect. That's a great analogy. I mean, and then it almost makes the scarier scenes scarier, because you're at this point where you've released and you're laughing a little bit, and you feel like a little tension, and then boom, you get smacked upside the head again.
Absolutely. I had done a short interview with Tom Savini, and he had, during this interview, said that anybody can scare anyone, but it takes a master artist to be able to scare them in a way where they never see it coming.
Yeah, I mean, how many movies have we watched where you just know something's gonna jump out? I mean, that's just the nature of that movie, you know. And sure, that it always gets me. You're always like, son of a bitch. But you know, some of them, we've watched those horror movies, and the horror is sublime, and it just like it's one of them things you're thinking about for days afterwards, you know. And that's what we strive for. That's what we want to do to our audience.
All right, we're going to move back over to Scott Pearson because I know he's chomping at the bit now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would like to go back to character development and ask, are your characters real to you? Can you sit and talk to a character and flesh out what's going to happen with them in a story?
You know, they have become now. They really have become part of my life. Like, God damn it, I wish I had a BT in my life. He's such an awesome character. I wish he was somebody I based off of real life. The one that's really can I swear on the show? Are we good with that, or I got to keep it PG?
We're actually very G-rated.
Oh, okay. Okay, the one that messed with my head the most. I wrote a story. What the hell? This is called The Spirit Clearing, and I wrote a character in there called Jandalyn Hollow, and she wormed her way into my head like I have never had any character before, and things that happened in that book were crushing for me. Like I wrote that book 3-4 years ago, and I still can't get it out of my damn head. So yeah,
in your history of being in the horror genre, what is the most influential work that you've ever read that inspired you, or seen, read or seen?
I grew up on Stephen King. I adore him. I love him. When I grew up reading. I lived at the library. We grew up with not much money, so the library was my home away from home. I would get books like they were going out of style. And then, God damn it, how old was I? I was about 10, and I read it, and I was blown away. Like my little 10-year-old mind just kind of blew off into the sunset when, you know, Georgie, you want your boat, or whatever that line is, and it was right there and then that I'm like, I really think I like horror. I think I like the way that makes me feel. And
you like floating down there.
Yeah, so I think that was my first indoctrination and my first love, and yeah, and it's stuck. And you know, that's why I'm not writing historical romance.
All right, Mark, talk about the necessity of having a symbiosis between your reader and your work.
I mean, if they're not involved and they don't see themselves in that story the way I want them to be, then they're not going to enjoy it. I've been told numerous times that people really feel like they are living that story, that they're actually in it while it's happening because of the way the narrative and the way Mike interacts with the people all around him, and so they get immersed. And I guess that's the experience that they enjoy, and that humbles me, and I'm honored that that's the way they go into my books.
I'm interested in what you have to say about this next question. Can you walk into the environment of zombie fallout and observe as if you were a third person watching? Can you do that? And if you can, how do you get that essence to be able to do that?
I think that's kind of how any author. Well, I can't. It's hard to say. I don't know. How everybody else approaches the craft. I would think that would be the way you have to write your story, because I mean, you are the overseer of this world, and so you have to be able to walk into it. I mean, I literally am walking around in the scene, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how is that monster attacking? Can they literally bite? Like, you're almost like a director, and you're looking at, the actors are playing out in your head, and you're trying to make sure that it makes sense when you're putting it down, onto paper or onto the screen. So I would think that's how most folks do it. I can't say for sure. It's just the way I do it.
What's the most difficult aspect of creating that you found so far?
Geez, I just so enjoy it. I don't consider creating the difficult part, the refining and the revising. That part of the creating process. Yeah, man. You have like when I send the book to the editor, I kind of hope she's going on vacation so I don't get it back for a long time, because I hate that part of the process. I mean, when it gets back into my inbox, it's just like bummer. That's the part I don't like. I feel like, I had the story to tell. I told the story. There's the story, and now I have to, make it pretty.
What do you do to evolve? As with all things have to evolve or they die. What are you doing, or what do you feel you need to do to keep evolving as an author?
Well, I don't want to write the same story over and over again. That's part of it. The introduction of new characters, like kind of taking some things to their ends, their logical end, and moving forward. I really try. I'm not great. I'm not overly successful at it, but I try to take suggestions and learn from my editors as I go, so I don't keep making the same mistakes. But it's the introduction of kind of new blood into the story, and just to keep going with it.
Dead Door says, "Speak for yourself. He's evolved, and he's still dead." All right, way to go, Dead Door.
So to speak.
Well, you know what, Mark? I have something I used to ask a while back. I quit asking it for various reasons, but I'm going to ask you this because I think you might find it amusing.
Okay.
What does the saying "best laid plans of mice and men" mean to you?
Well, I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and this was the direction I was going to go with the story. That's kind of how the character wanted it said, and then you're halfway into it and nope, that's just not how it wanted to go. And I've done more left turns or hard right turns in my stories than I'm kind of baffled myself when that kind of stuff happens, because I had these plans laid out and that's how I wanted to do it, and then the character just runs the other way with it for whatever reason. So best laid plans, we all like to plan, but it just kind of never works out that way.
That's the truth. All right, so I talk about the creative process and what it takes to be able to get someone to the point where they feel like they're ready to explore this particular new world as they create it. And we talk about the essence of emotional excess and its essential quality to the creation process. Do you feel that on any side of the fence you had to get to a certain point in your emotional state before you could go and either write a scene or start a new project?
No. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer this right or the way I want to, but I've always thought, that was my fear. Am I going to get stuck? Am I not going to be able to do it? Or can I not write because I'm sick or I'm tired or I just... No, it's a creative process. It's there. You write when you need to. You write even not when you need to. You write when you want to. You just sit down and do it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could always have an excuse of why you're not gonna. I'm not in the right frame of mind. I'm just too tired. I'm sick today. My dog puked on the carpet. You could make 5,000 excuses if you wanted to. You just write. Whether sometimes even whether you're feeling it or not, because there's 5 revision processes. You can go back and clean it up. I'm not sure that's the right way I wanted to answer that, but no, I don't need to be sad when somebody dies in the book. If I don't need to be. I write because I love to write, and I'm gonna write no matter what's going on.
All right, I'm going to go over to Scott Pearson. Go ahead, Scott.
Do you ever look at somebody that cuts you off in traffic or that pisses you off in the checkout stand line and say, oh, you have one of those Ren and Stimpy moments like, oh, the things I'm going to do to you?
You have no idea, dude. I'm actually going to name names because I can.
Yes!
I had he was a very new author at the time. He's getting established now, and literally he's a very talented dude, and I very much like him. I got no problem with him, so we'll put that out there. Heath Stallcup, way back when, he asked as an homage, because I had inspired him to write, can he put me in one of his books? My actual name, Mark Tufo, be in the books. I was like, dude, this is the only caveat. Yes, I'll be very honored. I'll be very humbled if you put me in the book, but I want it, honest to God, dude, I want it to be a very, very small part. I want him to die heroically and have a Viking send-off. If you do that, we're cool. I can live with that. Well, Heath, he kind of writes the same way. Seat of his pants, the characters dictate. Well, this character becomes a main character. I was like, son of a gun. Well, this character starts doing some funky, freaky things, 3-4 books down the road, and it's like I start hearing from people, and they're like, hey, did you know your character is doing this? And it's like, Heath, payback sucks, because, yeah, I put him in a book, Tim 3. I don't know if you know anything about my Tim series, but it is one of the most vulgar, dark series I've got, and Heath makes it into the series, and it does not go well for Mr. Stallcup. So I got my measure of payback.
Not a long-running character.
Not a long-running character.
You're dead. You're so dead.
Yeah, but it's the way it's the way he dies that makes it interesting.
Mark, what started you writing in this? What started you creating in general in this genre, even before you wrote, when you were just a storyteller? Because every good author was a storyteller before they became an author. What first sparked your love of horror?
Well, it started way back in grade school. I didn't realize it then, but like when we had to read a book and write a book report or write a story about the book we read and stuff, and I would watch all my classmates be like moaning and groaning and like, oh crap, Mrs. Fields, we want to do this crap, and I was like inside like, oh cool, we get to write, with that I enjoy writing. I enjoyed it way back in grade school, and then I took a creative English class or something in college, and that kind of reinstilled it, and I wrote a lot. I wrote a journal. I started the Indian Hill book, and I realized that I very much enjoy writing. And then even my buddy and I were just messing around, and we created our own little newspaper. It was the Effin' Times, and we would write stories back and forth to each other in this newspaper, and that it's funny, it took me so friggin' long to figure out that I enjoyed writing, whereas the clues were there for me for years. But, it was about 2009 that it really took off for me writing, in terms of, like, this is what I like to do.
All right, I'm going to go to the next subject of imagery. So the topic is imagery, and the question is, imagery is highly important when it comes to creating a written work. What methods do you use to convey imagery?
It's almost more of an emotional state, like what the main character is. You're living it through his eyes, and how he is seeing it, and I think that's why people get immersed in the stories, because I'm not describing the veiny part of a leaf as the person walks by. I'm describing the creepiness of the forest and how dark it is and silent, and so that's why you feel like you're in it, and that's my imagery. You're more immersed in it. You're not an outside observer, I guess.
So you're actually getting the essence of what it feels like to have the sun set on the person's face, and what it feels like to smell the different kinds of things that are going on around, and allowing for the person that's reading it to be able to get in touch with whatever that is that helps them connect to the character.
Yeah, I mean, I'll very much go into depth about the fetid smell of zombies and what it's doing to the people that are there, and people like get grossed out by that, and I think it's hilarious. They smelled like Fritos and feet or something, and I mean you really start to visualize this, because I'm telling you what the characters are going through.
I'm going to hashtag that Fritos and feet, Mark Tufo. All right, so perspective is everything. What perspective do you bring currently to your work that is going to improve it? Scott, mute your mic.
Kill a cat.
Okay, so the question then is perspective. Well, the topic is perspective. My question to you about that: what perspective have you recently gained to be able to help you improve your work?
I don't know that I know the answer to that one. Just I get lots of comments and stuff from folks. I actually will take on the perspective of my audience and what they see in the stories, and then even my audio books have gained in popularity over the electronic books, and I guess I've shifted the perspective of how I write a little bit in regards to that. I mean, I do write with the knowledge that these books are going to become audio books, and some things that read perfectly don't translate well in audio, and I'll have to make sure that it's described accurately in that way. And then even how I write, I try to get rid of the 8 million he saids, she saids, and so it doesn't kind of break up the flow when you're trying to listen to the story.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
What question have I not asked you that you've been dying anybody to ask you?
I am so open and accessible, and I don't know that I've ever had a question that I'm willing to answer that hasn't been asked of me. I'm actually pretty good. I don't have any secrets I'm yearning to get out. Let's put it that way.
All right, so we were talking a little bit earlier about film scores and the importance of pacing within films. When you go to move from a rather heightened scene where there's a lot of emotional impact, what do you do to be able to bring it back down to a more breathable pace so that your characters can catch up as well as your readers?
I think this might be I'm not gonna say unique, because there's some very talented folks out there that do it very well and probably better, but a niche that I do have is humor. There is a lot of humor injected into the series, and that really gives folks a breather. I mean, Mike will say the most inane, craziest crap at the worst time, and it just that allows people to sigh and take a breath and be like, oh, okay, all right, everything's good for a second anyway.
What at this moment in time are you most amazed about when it comes to your writing career?
That people like it. It's Jackie. It's still so surreal that I get to do this full time, and that blows me away, and I'm so stoked this is what I can do with my life, and that people will support me to do this, and I'm relaying stories out there, and that people dig it is just freaking awesome.
All right, we are now at 9:54, and I've got some questions that I want to ask you.
Sure.
Surprise!
Yay.
Most of these are going to be one-word answers, and I'm very curious as to what your replies will be.
Booze.
All right, so we're going to start. What is your favorite word?
Beer. No. I take that back. Coffee.
What is your least favorite word?
Edit.
What turns you on creatively?
Rock and roll.
What turns you off?
Jazz.
What sound or noise do you love?
I was gonna say when the microwave dings. It's probably when the Dunkin' Donuts lady says, "How can I help you?" when I pull up to the drive-thru.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Probably traffic. Traffic horns. I can't. They drive me nuts.
What profession, other than the one you currently possess, would you most like to try?
Oh my gosh. Certainly not human resources. Nobody wants me back there. Shoot. I don't know. I honest to God, man, if this, I don't know what I'd do if this wasn't going on. I don't know where I would fit in anymore. I am so friggin' off the wall. I don't know. Probably fast food worker would be fine. That probably would be the only place I could make it.
What profession would you not like to do?
Fast food worker, because
I love you. You're awesome. All right. So the final question: if heaven exists, what would you like them to say when you arrive?
welcome. There's some people I'm very much looking forward to reuniting with.
Very cool.
Not anytime soon, but
I know, right?
Right. There's some people I'm very much looking forward to seeing again.
All right, now is the point in time where I need you to put all your really cool stuff, like that podcast that you do, and your websites and blogs or whatever you have out there. Go.
Well, I want to thank Armand Rosamilia. He's the one that dragged me into the Armand Toof's Dead Time podcast. I am very much more comfortable being interviewed, because you are a great interviewer, Jackie. I'm really not trying to blow smoke. You do your job very well. I am not nearly as well versed as you, and luckily Armand is very professional and he takes on most of the heavy work, and I just kind of sit in the background and laugh like a stoner. But I do want to thank him because we do have fun, and we did just win a People's Choice Award for the iProject Radio over on a different site. But so I want to thank him. I'm on marktufo.com. I'm all over Facebook. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I mean, if you can't get a hold of me, you ain't trying. What else we got going on? Armand and I got a book coming out soon that we wrote together, United States of Apocalypse. I want to thank, I feel like I'm at the Academy, but Brad Thomas, he's the actual producer. He's working on getting Zombie Fallout onto the screen. And I don't know if you know, but a couple weeks ago I was actually out in LA and we did a Zombie Fallout teaser, and we actually got to shoot it with a bunch of professional folks. What a kick in the friggin' pants that was.
Wow.
Yeah, dude, you have no idea. It was so much fun. I had a stupid crap-eating grin on my face like for 3 days straight.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. A lot of fun, and then we got to see all the crazies out in LA, so that was cool too. And
Who's going to direct?
What's that?
Who's going to direct?
It's gentleman Brad Thomas. He's a very talented guy. He's got a lot of connections out there. He's actually on a lot of shows out in LA. And gosh, we did a whole shoot on a Saturday. It was cool. We had a meet and greet, and a bunch of fans came out, and they were all zombie extras for the shoot. And oh my gosh, we just had a good time. Fun day.
Wow.
All right, very cool. All right, now is the time for my crew to say their final goodbyes, and then we have to zip right over to our next hour. So go, Scott Pearson. Don't make it long.
Okay, I'll try not to. It has been a blast, Mark. I am so looking forward to having you back on again because I got a bunch more questions.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate everybody on the show. I love when Jackie wants me to come on because I know how good she is at her stuff. So it's always awesome coming here.
Thank you.
It's because you're so good at your stuff.
Yeah. I just BS a lot, man.
All right, and Dead Door William, he's finally going to get a word in edgewise. Go ahead, Dead Door.
Hey, Mark, thanks for coming by. And next time I'll try to be here earlier if I don't have to chase down Crunchy.
Thanks, Dead Door, man. Always good to hear from you, man.
Yeah, same here.
All right, thank you so much to Mark Tufo. Yeah, that's like for me, having this man on is like the Academy Awards. This is a great place to be able to check him out, and the interview was just absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for being on, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Jackie. As always, I had a great time.
Good night.
Good night.
I always get so nervous when he's on, too. I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to screw things up. I know he's been interviewed a lot, and I just, want to make sure that I get everything the right way. And all right, so our next person, and I already went and I gave her link. Scott Pearson, I want you to introduce our next guest. We have Nicole Cushing. Go ahead and push that button.
Nicole is a not just nominated, but twice nominated author in the Bram Stoker Awards for this year. And the first one was for her book Mr. Suicide, and she was nominated for Superior Achievement in a First Novel. And the second nomination that she received was for Superior Achievement in a Fiction Collection, The Mirrors. We were going to have her on last week, and I'm so glad that we were able to bring her on this week. I believe she just joined the call. Welcome, Nicole.
Oh, great to be here.
Well, welcome. Your very first time on Zombiepalooza Radio. We appreciate you being here. And what I want to do first is I want to introduce my staff to you because they're kind of new to you. So we have with us Scott Pearson. He's head of all things green and our research department for Zombiepalooza Radio. Go ahead, Scott.
Welcome to the show, Nicole, and congratulations on 2 nominations in the same year.
Thank you, Scott. I'm good to meet you.
All right, and now we're moving over to Dead Door William. And Dead Door, go ahead and say your hellos.
Good evening, Nicole. And congratulations.
No, thank you so much. You look a little bit peaked there, Dead Door, but good to meet you.
And Dead Door's a zombie, so peaked is good for Dead Door. All right, Dead Door? All right, so we're going to have staff go ahead and mute their mics so I don't have any interference. And so, Nicole, you're a pretty cool author, apparently. People are really digging what you've got as far as your work that has been nominated. What did you think when you first heard that you were on the table for perhaps nominations?
Oh, goodness. I just thought to take it all in stride. This is such an unpredictable business, really. That's one of the things that I've learned during my time. I had been on the preliminary ballot before, about 3 years ago, for a short story, and that one did not end up getting nominated. So I knew that not to make any assumptions and to just kind of wait and see, and just see how things would turn out. So, and that's what I try to do with all of these kinds of things in the business. There are so many ups and downs in publishing that I've learned to try to be very zen about it, which is not my natural state of mind, but because my writing is very emotional, so it's not something that comes easily to me. But I've learned over time to really just focus on appreciating the work. Obviously, I'm honored to have the 2 nominations. I think it's you work and you work and you work in the trenches for such a long time, and and you're there with your laptop, and it's just you and your laptop, and that's nothing, and you're there and you're working with the editor, and you don't know how the work is going to be received. So it feels really good to be, to know that there's a possibility of nomination is a good feeling. And then when the nominations come through, it's an ecstatic feeling. It's a feeling that all this work has not been for nothing.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. All right, so you're only one of a very few authors that have gotten the position of having 2 nominations this year. To celebrate the Bram Stoker Award nomination for Mr. Suicide, the publisher has decided to cut the price of the Kindle edition to $2.99. It was originally $4.99, so you get a nice little chunk of change off of that. Nicole's work is edgy, but not always gory. Talk about that. Talk about how you can create in a space where you allow yourself to be able to get right to that point and then draw back some, and that the reader is very enticed by this.
Well, for me, it's the only way I know how to write. I'm not interested in writing the kind of violence that is so over the top that it's kind of funny, because just for me, that doesn't work. And everyone has their own taste, and it's cool if people are into the gross out for gross out. I'm not against that. It just doesn't work for me. So for me, it just comes very naturally that I want violence to be very realistic, and I want traumatic experiences that people encounter, the characters encounter in the work, to be emotionally realistic. I don't want it to be where there's so much violence where all the different pieces of violence tend to kind of blur together and they become trivialized. And I don't want them to be made kind of bigger than life, exaggerated, where it becomes where they are, where it's just kind of comical. I want that kind of in between. It's kind of in the tradition of grindhouse films, honestly. If you look at those grindhouse films from the 70s, they were really brutal and emotionally realistic, even if the action wasn't always realistic, and true to what those experiences are like. And so I think for the reader, I think the appeal is that this is something not entirely different, but a little bit different than what's offered in the marketplace. And I think they appreciate that their intelligence is not being insulted, that it's something with real characters that you engage with, where the violence is as realistic as possible, where the emotional content is as realistic as possible. And I think there's audiences for other kinds of horror fiction, obviously, but I think that there's an audience out there for what I'm doing, and I think that we're starting to see that appeal. So I'm grateful for that.
Your work, Mr. Suicide. I think, hang on one second. I'm getting an echo from somewhere, and I don't know where it's coming from. All right. Your work, Mr. Suicide, was praised by Jack Ketchum, who said that the work had been adapted. Oh, boy. Does anybody have any idea where I'm getting this echo from? Now it's not there. So whatever you did over there on the other side, don't touch the button again. Mr. Suicide was praised by Jack Ketchum. an author of edgy novels like The Girl Next Door. Ketchum's work has been adapted into several films, and Stephen King called him the scariest guy in America. You got a quote also from Publishers Weekly that said it was a work of brutal and extreme horror, disturbingly graphic content. Jack Ketchum says novels don't come much more transgressive than this one, folks. When you get high praise like that from such a level as that, what is it about yourself that allows you to stay very grounded? Because you're not like over the top. You're very intensely aware of your readers and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I think I think it comes with emotional maturity, honestly. I'm going to do something that you're never supposed to do. I'm going to tell my age. I'm 42 years old, and I've been writing for 8 years, basically. Been writing since 2008. Yeah, so I started in the later part of 2008. So I've seen a lot of careers kind of, do this kind of ups and downs kind of thing, and so I think for me it's on the one hand I don't want to underplay it because I have a great deal of respect for Jack Ketchum and for his work. I had a chance to meet him last year at the World Horror Convention down in Atlanta, and that was a real treat. And I've corresponded with him a little bit by email, but but at the same time you realize that you have to stay grounded because ultimately, number one, that most careers kind of have ups and downs, and that's part of the gig, and number two, there's always new work to come, and so part of it is, I'm being praised now for writing that I did, a year or two ago, and so right now I'm working on a new story, and I have other projects coming up that I'm working on. And I feel the challenge of doing the very best I can with them in front of me. And so I always try to keep humility before the page. In other words, the blank page is always there, and I always want to do the very best I can. I feel like I owe that to my readers, never to call it in. Even if it's a short story, I never want to just kind of, write something quick and just kind of do the bare minimum. I always want to bring my best to it. And so I think that the challenge of the page keeps me humble because, when you have the blank page and you're trying to do the very best that you can, and you're trying to always grow as a writer, I never want to really get into this idea of acting like a coked up rock star, The other thing that makes it easy to be humble is, writers are not out there like visually in terms of like a singer or a film star is,
Right.
So we're not in the public eye quite as much, and I think that helps too.
All right, so Cemetery Dance said after finishing Mr. Suicide, "It's difficult to believe that this is her first published novel. I can't recommend this book enough. One of the best I've read this year." Very cool, very cool. All right, so in addition to writing horror fiction, Nicole is also a horror journalist for the British horror film magazine Scream. She has interviewed Greg Nicotero, legendary special effects artist and one of the executive producers of The Walking Dead, Phantom's Reggie Bannister, Jennifer Rubin of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, and Don Shanks, Michael Myers in Halloween 5. What is it like for you to be able to have this kind of association with people that are relatively on a grand scale?
I guess it's what I realize when I've met with these people is that, first of all, if you ask somebody from Hollywood what the number one misunderstanding that people have about people from Hollywood, what I've heard from multiple movie people is that people tend to put them up on pedestals, and people tend to, kind of think of them in this grand way, and they'll say to you things like, we're just people like anyone else. And that's kind of what I've gotten over time. I mean, it's probably the interview that taught me the most about this kind of thing is Greg Nicotero. He was at a convention locally, and I had a media pass to the convention, and I was able to spend some time at the convention early, and I just happened to ask him that day if he would be willing to take a few minutes, and he agreed to, and which was a great thing, and that, just looking at what his schedule was like the whole day. Obviously, when Greg Nicotero comes to a convention, he is mobbed. I mean, it's
right.
Really, his schedule is very like boom, 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 boom. And lots of folks want autographs, and lots of folks want their time with him and want to be able to, share their appreciation about The Walking Dead. And so he was going. I was able to get maybe, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes of his time, and then he was off to the next thing.
Right.
And so what I've laid an appreciation for is just how difficult it can be for folks in that position. And also, I've seen a lot of graciousness on the part of the stars. I think Greg Nicotero was certainly very gracious, certainly very open to communicating with fans, and gracious with his time, and just spending a lot of time and being available, and even making himself available to me too. So that was a big thing. The other name that comes to mind is Sarah Karloff. This is Boris Karloff's daughter, who appears on the convention circuit a fair bit now. And she was just so gracious with so many people wanting to come and talk to her about what her father's career meant to them. And it was really moving just to kind of be along the side. And of course, I'm a big fan of the classic Universal movies myself, but to be kind of on the sideline interviewing her, and then a fan would come up, and of course she always would ask me to stop the interview because the fans came first. And I think that says a lot about her, that she's there for the fans, and all of those folks. I mean, that's the thing about horror people. I think horror people tend to not have quite as much ego as a lot of other kinds of film people, maybe. I don't know what it is, but there's a camaraderie out there, and there's a genuineness, and we deal with all of these incredibly edgy, disturbing kinds of things, but when you get us in a room together, we have the time of our lives, and we're very genuine, and we're very fun-loving, and it's just a really cool thing. So I think that's one of the things I've learned, is just that these people are just like anyone else, and except they've done extraordinary things, and they're sharing that with us, and they like to share it with us when they go to a convention. Typically, they're there to meet the fans, and just they're great people.
So you're nominated for Superior Achievement in a first novel with Mr. Suicide. Talk to me about how you created this particular piece. Take me from concept to post-production.
Oh, wow. I knew that, well, let's start before even concept really was there. I was writing short stories primarily for a long time, and gradually what happened is my stories got longer, and so I started writing novellas, so not quite novels, but not quite stories, kind of like this middle child kind of thing. And I wrote a couple of those, and then I felt kind of ready to take on a longer piece, and I think I was inspired by a lecture that Jack Ketchum gave, which you can find on YouTube actually, called Writing from the Wound. That's W-O-U-N-D, Writing from the Wound. And he talks about basically taking our very personal experiences that are very difficult and using them as the basis for fiction. And that resonated with me. That felt like something that I might try to do. It felt like I could maybe write a novel based on that idea. So, and I'd been writing some things, but they weren't quite working. And then I tried to write from the wound and explore some of the things that were very difficult for me growing up. And some of these were, depression or family dysfunction or, just people in my family who had mental illness and this kind of thing, difficult issues. And I used that as a basis. And then I also talked, kind of thought about people I grew up around, like, kids I knew in school, some of who said really disturbing things at times, and we just kind of let it go back then. And it's just kind of like, so thinking about some of those kids at school, some of the people I grew up with, some of my own stuff, and then just kind of using my imagination, obviously, and coming up with all these different characters and situations that these could be in. There's a force in the book, kind of an entity called the Great Dark Mouth, and the Great Dark Mouth had appeared in a previous book of mine, a novella. So it was a shorter thing. It wasn't novel length. It was a novella called Children of No One. And that was actually nominated for a Shirley Jackson Award for 2013. So I had this kind of thing, which is like this force of nihilism, this force of emptiness, darkness, meaninglessness. This kind of oblivion. This kind of like creature that was depression manifested. And so I wanted to play with that a little bit more too, and so I took it to the next level with Mr. Suicide. Kind of gave that creature or that entity more to do. I kind of built that up a little bit more. It kind of became a little bit more real. So that was a lot of where it went, and then execution was really I can't remember how long it took me to write Mr. Suicide. I'm thinking at least a year, but I could be wrong. And what I really, it was lots of, let me try this idea. I would write, I have like tens of thousands of words on the cutting room floor, really, with this book, because there was lots of trial and error. But, and then I went ahead and I was approached by a publisher about the possibility of submitting a novel, and I had the novel available to submit, and so that's when I got in contact with Ross Lockhart from Word Horde, and so we talked about it, and Ross had some suggestions for the ending, which I think were very helpful, and so I did a rewrite of the novel based on that, and the novel got a little bit longer as a result of that too. And we just kind of went from there. So it's a long process. It's grueling. It's a lot of when you're there in front of the laptop, it's not particularly glamorous, but it sure is nice to see the reward.
We have last month we did a series about women in horror, and that last month there was a lot of people that were focusing in on women who write in this particular genre. And I'm interested in finding out what your take is about that whole topic of focusing in on women as it is something that perhaps is separate from the horror genre. The fact that they're female and they produce in this genre has to be put up front because perhaps maybe not enough people know that they do this, or is it some sort of anomaly? Oh, you're a woman and you write in horror? What?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. I mean, in general, I just try to not even think about issues of identity too much when I get into my thing. I mean, and that's not to say other people shouldn't get into it. I would say basically, if this works for people, then great. If it feels good and if it promotes a positive community where people feel excited about the field and excited of people from all backgrounds getting into the field, then I think that's great. My personal thing is really just to focus on my own work and just, kind of like keep nose to grindstone. Just do what I need to do to be successful and not think about the external world so much, because there's really not a whole lot you can do to control the outside environment. I mean, if someone wants to be a jerk, they're going to be a jerk. But I think really that question is maybe better directed towards really young writers. Like, I think if you ask somebody who women write horror, but if I have some college student who is, just kind of getting into writing it, she may not be as familiar with all the women who write horror. So it's something that I probably haven't thought about as much as I should. But I think it's a good question. I don't think that there's anything that any harm in asking questions like that and exploring them, even if people come to different answers. I think as long as we just mutually respect each other and all the different opinions about that kind of thing, that's the important thing.
Thank you for that. All right, we're going to go into character development, and I'm interested in your book, The Mirrors, and I want to talk to you about what you did when you first initially met your main character.
Well, The Mirrors is a short story collection, so there are all kinds of main characters going on there. But I would say that with characters in general, I try to really get as far back into the brain of the character as possible. So with character development, where I always try to start is, putting myself as deep into the mind of that character as possible, and thinking about, what kind of language are they going to use that makes them distinct. If I have a story, I don't want the characters to all sound alike necessarily, unless there's a reason for that. What I want is, if I have 3 different characters in a story, I should be able to tell them apart without telling you who's saying what, just because their language is going to be slightly different. Ideally. Sometimes that's not the case, but like right now I'm working on a story that has an older woman and her daughter, and obviously the older woman is going, elderly woman is going to use different language than her daughter uses because there's a generation gap. So there's going to be at least slight differences there, and I want to reflect that. So there's so many different ways to flesh out characters. Language is one. Another is just kind of like what they notice that other people don't notice. As far as like putting yourself into the position of a character, things that what I try to do, and this is a good tip for anyone who's kind of at the beginning of their writing career, is to use as many sensory details as possible. If you tell me what a character is smelling, that will that puts you in a deeper level of their consciousness than if you're just talking about what they're feeling or what they see. So I would say using sensory details is one thing, and another part of this just kind of like is something I can't explain. I talked about it a little bit in my preface to The Mirrors, where it's where I talk about this idea of it's almost like dual possession, where I possess the character, almost in the sense of like a demon possesses somebody else. I possess the character, and the character possesses me, and we kind of have this intermingling of, and it's very strange, and it probably sounds like I'm psychotic or something, but that's like the best way I can describe it. It's a very kind of unusual experience that really, there's no way for me to put logical, framework around it other than I feel like I'm connected to this character in a very real way until the story is done. Sometimes that can be very difficult. If I'm writing about somebody who is, really violent, then it's almost like that person is camped out on my couch for the story, and that's not fun. But it's the cost of getting it right.
So when you're writing in a particular piece, do you find yourself immersed in that particular genre? Or
I do. Yeah, like well, what I write is always pretty dark. Sometimes I've written dark, humorous kinds of things, but they're still pretty grim, But I love dark fiction. That's pretty much all that I read is dark fiction. So it might be stuff that that might not necessarily be horror fiction, but it's usually always dark. But there are times when I do need to take a break, and that's why it's always fun to, watch a little bit of TV. I like my Mystery Science Theater 3000. I like my Major League Baseball. I like hanging out with my husband. I like going for walks. I like playing with my cat. I like going out to lunches with some of my friends here in the Louisville area, and just having a good life, enjoying life. I can't stay immersed in it completely because I would probably that would not be very good for my mental health. So I have to take little breaks every now and then.
Imagery is highly important when you're creating the written word. What kinds of techniques do you use, if any, to be able to help yourself be able to create the imagery that is necessary for your work?
That's a great question, and for me, I have an odd advantage, perhaps, in that I've had a series of very distinct and colorful nightmares that I have prompted stories where, especially a lot of the short stories in the mirrors, I would get a nightmare at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would wake up and I couldn't get back. Well, I couldn't get back to sleep, and so I would be there and I would decide, well, I'm going to make lemonade out of lemons, and I'm going to try to write a story around this. Now, the important thing to know about imagery in general, and nightmares in particular, is that a nightmare is usually too chaotic to be a story. It doesn't really have the structure that a good story has. It usually lacks really strong characterization, for example. The characters in nightmares usually aren't all that fleshed out. So I can't just write down the nightmare and what happened in the nightmare. But I can use an image. I can pluck out an image from a nightmare that has a particular intensity to it or a particular strangeness, and then I can build a story around that. And so I'll take the image and I'll kind of ask myself, well, how would this image crop up? For example, I had a nightmare where I was in front of a mirror, and my reflection in the mirror was like a waxy kind of dummy that was melting. It was very disturbing, and so I thought, well, if I took that out of my nightmare and I made that into a story, how could I explain, someone looking into a mirror and seeing a waxy melting dummy? And I built a story around that, which is called The Mirrors, and that's the title story of the collection. So, and that happened to me, at least 4 or 5 other times where imagery from nightmares has served as inspiration. So I always say I don't really mind nightmares too much because those are research.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go over to Scott Pearson, who I know is just itching to ask his first question.
I am for a fact. First off, I love you for the tip of the hat to Joel and the Bots. They are remaking MST3K. God love them. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be Joel Hodgson. I would like to know, in your character development, you obviously do what I've dubbed method writing. You actually become the characters to an extent. Do you have situations when you're creating the characters where you can actually sit down and discuss with them what they will and won't do?
Kind of. It doesn't really work that way for me. It's more, I don't really think of them as a tangible person, except there's one or two that have been that way where, I feel like almost they're in the corner, and if I haven't written about them in a while, and I feel like they're almost like, nudging me with their finger and saying, come on, write about me. But a lot of what I do is just kind of thinking, okay, I'm the daughter in this story, and my mother is doing this, and how would I behave under these circumstances? And that's the beginning of the process. And if, in a short story, that might not be too complicated. In a novel, you're spending a lot more time with the character. And so there's more of a capacity for that kind of back and forth where you can almost feel like you're having a conversation with the character. But it never really takes place for me like a dialogue. It's usually just something kind of more internal. And it's hard for me to explain, but the best I can get to is that dual possession idea that, I'm in them and they're in me, and it's almost like there's telepathy between the two of us, which is really going to make me sound odd now. But, you
Not at all. Douglas Adams once said that his favorite, and many authors that he corresponded with agreed, his favorite book and their favorites were very rarely the fans' favorites. Do you find that to be the case with your body of work? Your favorite work, is it reflected as a fan favorite, or do they go after the things that you had written that weren't?
I would say that I'm early enough in my career that I haven't really encountered that quite so much because people are still discovering me. So all the readers out there who haven't yet discovered me, hey, it's me. So I haven't, Douglas Adams obviously had a lengthy career and sold, tons and tons and tons and tons of books. And I'm still, even though I've had some good experiences with accolades and I've been writing for a while, the success is kind of new. So the body of work is still emerging. The closest thing to that I will say is that I tend to, I have lots of people who really have enjoyed my novella Children of No One, and then I have another novella that came after that called I Am the New God, and I really was, hoping that I Am the New God would have the same level of appreciation. And I don't think it's done poorly. They both have about the same number of Amazon reviews, and they both have about the same amount of positive comments. But it seems like there's just a little bit more enthusiasm for Children of No One. And so sometimes they're like, well, what about, I Am the New God? But there is a little bit of that. But I would say, right now I'm at the at the part of my career where that's not happening so much. I'm sure it will later.
Thank you for that. All right.
I'm sorry. Try it.
Scott Pearson needs to do a little bit more research.
Excuse me? How's that?
Do we want to do this now? We don't want to do this now.
Okay.
All right. Where do I want to go? When you go to create, we talked about your environment. We talked about character setting. Want to talk to you next about pacing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about creating the level of pacing that's needed for such a strong piece?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think it depends on what kind of work I'm doing. Let's say a novel is what we're talking about. In a novel, I have some room to stretch out a little bit, so I can have a bigger cast of characters. I can have the work take place over a longer stretch of time. For example, Mr. Suicide takes a look at this kid in this dysfunctional family from the age of 10 until about the age of, if I'm not mistaken, 18 or 19. And so that's a long period of time to look at, and we have all kinds of side characters and everything. So, and the pacing at the beginning is almost like a chapter for every year, and then when the kid turns 18, then it kind of, the pacing gets a little bit more boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, boom. My preference overall is for quick pace. That's just what I like. So it's very intuitive for me. My ideas about pacing are that it has to feel right. It has to almost kind of like sound right to me. What the rhythm is, but although even though I'm saying it's intuitive, I did actually with Mr. Suicide, now that I think about it, look at the chapter lengths, and I would actually, like, I wrote out on like a spreadsheet or something. Okay, this chapter is 15 pages long. The next chapter is 5 pages long. The next chapter is 30 pages long. And what I wanted to do is I made a very conscious effort to make it as friendly to the reader as possible. So the first chapter is relatively short, and that's because I wanted to give the reader a reward for getting that first chapter read, to kind of suck them in a little bit more. So the reader goes through, I think, around 10 pages or so for that first chapter, and then they get to chapter 2, and then they're a little bit more deeply immersed. Whereas if I put a 30-page chapter in chapter 1, then that bogs people down a little bit more, and they think they really aren't making too much progress. So those are some things about pacing that I think about. And then the rest of it is, I never want to waste the reader's time. One of the things that drives me crazy when I'm writing a novel is getting the sense of when things are padded, basically. Like if I get the feeling that the writer is just putting stuff in there just so they can get to 80,000 words, then I start to feel like I just don't like that. That's like nails on a blackboard to me, and so I know some people will skim parts of a book, but I'm just not. That's not in me. I can't skim. I just find it impossible to skim. So I prefer tight pacing. I prefer a lot of relatively quick progress, and I prefer not to waste the reader's time. So cut out all the boring parts, I think somebody once said, or cut out all the parts that people usually skim. I think that I can't remember which author said that, but I'm in favor of that.
All right, I'm going to give you a statement. The devil is in the details.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
There's nothing truer than that. For me, I'm a little obsessive about my work, and that's because the benchmark of whether I feel my career has been a success is, for me personally, is I look at one day when I'm on my deathbed, will I be able to look at the shelf in the hospital room with all my books and be able to say that I did the very best that I can? and so that's how am going to measure my success. I hope that I don't get killed in a car accident, because then I won't have that experience of looking in my hospital bed at that beautiful shelf. But in general, so what that does is that makes me do my very best. I try to take kind of a blue collar approach to it, or a very thinking of it as a craftsperson, as someone who is doing this with love and wants this to be as fine a book as possible. So The Devil is in the Details takes place in a lot of different ways for me. It's the right words for the sentences, or the right sound of the sentences, or the right chapter length, or in proofreading, it is where it really kind of comes up for me. Even though I've had great editors, my editors for both The Mirrors and Mr. Suicide both provided support with proofreading. And in one case, actually hired a proofreader to help out in addition to the editor. But still, there's typos. you can read something 2 or 3 times and think you caught them all, and gosh darn it if there won't be one that you missed. So I try to be a typo assassin and catch those buggers before they can find their way out to the public. So yeah, that's a very true statement. I think the devil is in the details.
How does writing? What do I want to say? I'm getting that echo again. How does writing empower you?
Oh gosh. It has gotten me to know more about who I am, honestly. When I first started, okay, so little background about my my writing experiences. I tried to write when I was right out of college. This was in the late '90s, mid to late '90s, and so it was not a success. I sent out a couple of stories. I got rejection letters. The stories deserved to be rejected. They were awful. And then, so I stopped writing. And then I tried to write again in around the year 2001. And at that point, I sold 1 or 2 stories. And I hung out with a lot of writers. I went to a lot of parties. I drank a lot of drinks, but I didn't really make progress in my writing career. I didn't have the work ethic, and I didn't have really the stability in my life to be able to pull it off. But then in 2008, a lot of things had changed, and I was just at a more stable point. And I started to write, and when I started to write, and I really started to be honest about, what emotions I was dealing with. I mean, it empowered me to be able to look at part of myself that I wasn't looking at for a long time, and to be honest about kind of how I felt about things. It empowered me to know myself, and it also empowered me in the sense of when you see. Eventually, when you see people respond well to your work, and you see that there's a job well done, there's nothing more gratifying for me. I mean, it's I'm grateful for the Bram Stoker Award nominations, and I'm grateful for the way Mr. Suicide is selling now that we've had the especially since we had the sale where we put it on for $2.99, but really, what I love is just the satisfaction of a job well done, and that sounds entirely hokey, and kind of like like this is a Miss America question or something, and I'm talking about world peace or whatever, but it's true for me. I mean, for me, it's like just the satisfaction of a job well done is incredibly empowering, because when you know that you've touched somebody. When you get a fan letter from some person in Australia, who you've never met and you will never meet, that's empowering. When you see a picture of someone picking your book off a shelf of a bookstore and you had nothing to do with putting that book in that bookstore, then that's really empowering too. It lets you know that you can do this, and that you can build a career around it, and that's pretty exciting. I'm lost sound here for a second. I'm sorry, I'm losing. I lost the sound. It seems like. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of sound now.
I just unmuted, but Jackie, we can't hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Jackie. Yeah. Try the other end next to the computer. Scott, ask your question, please.
Okay, while she's trying to get the headset reconnected, I am curious, what inspired you in the very beginning to get into horror? What made you love horror?
Oh gosh. Well, a couple of different things. I'd like to think of it as a perfect storm. I was born in '73, so I came of age in the late '70s and early '80s. So horror entertainment was just kind of in the culture then. This was around the time of Stephen King's real heyday in publishing and entertainment. This was there was a television show in Philadelphia that I could get. I lived in northern Maryland, so we were able to get Philadelphia stations. So there was this show called Creature Double Feature in Philadelphia that had all these, horror movies from the 50s and 60s and 70s. So that was an influence. This was also the time when the horror hosts were really big. So in Philadelphia, there was a guy who hosted late-night horror movies named Dr. Shock. And I was a little bit too young to really get the full flavor of Dr. Shock's show, but I can vaguely remember a little bit of it. So there was all of those kinds of things. And at the same time as all this stuff was happening in pop culture with horror, I was experiencing death in my family. I mean, when I was 6 years old, my grandfather died, and so I'm a 6-year-old. I'm at my grandfather's funeral, and I don't know the fact that you're not supposed to go up and touch the body. I just no one had taught me that, and so I didn't know all the taboos about funerals. So I go, when we go up into my grandfather's coffin, I went up there and just kind of patted his hand as I went up, just to almost like to comfort him, because I loved my grandfather very much, and I felt how cold he was. And I think that was probably the day that I became a horror writer, because at that point there were, that encounter with death, that experience of loss, that intensity was there with me. A year after that experience, my grandmother died, and my mom took me to the hospital to see her before she died, and I saw my grandmother, but saw all these tubes kind of around her face, because she was on oxygen, and I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't really understand it, and so again, it's this other experience with death. So I had all these, so in pop culture we have all this horror stuff going on, and then in my personal life and my family, I had these experiences with death and loss, and then later on my own experiences with depression. And I think those kind of came together into a perfect storm. And I always like to think that I didn't choose horror so much as horror chose me.
That is possibly the most eloquent answer to that question I have ever gotten. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's an important question. I mean, I love the horror community. I love horror so much. It's in my DNA, maybe, or it's in the marrow of my bones. And that's one of the things that makes me very grateful for the Stoker nominations. I mean, just to know that I'm kind of, been honored by the horror community, and that I'm making a contribution is tremendously rewarding.
All right.
It's just a quickie. Do you ever have situations where you get upset with someone in a checkout line and you get the Ren and Stimpy moment? Oh, the things I'm gonna do to you. Do you ever take the therapeutic, cathartic way out on these?
There was one that comes to mind. I was in a checkout line, and this woman was talking about this act of cruelty that she perpetrated on an animal. I'm not going to go into the details, but she was talking about it. And I love animals. I love my cat. My cat is my little kiddo. And so I made sure that I wrote a character based on this woman, and in that she was going to be the most idiotic kind of just presentation of this woman possible. I mean, I didn't have to stretch too much because the woman did not sound like a brain scientist, or a rocket scientist, I should say. Or a brain, I said brain scientist, like, we talk about a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. I merged them. She was not the brightest bulb in the world, really. So it didn't take a whole lot of this exaggeration to make her into this kind of stupid, buffoonish kind of character. But that was the one experience that comes to mind. I'm trying to think about other characters. I mean, one of the things is I don't really, as far as like victims in the stories, I never really want to for the murders to come across as cathartic for the reader. I don't want the reader to think that any of the murders are really cool. I want the readers to think that these are real tragedies taking place. That these are it goes back to that emotional realism thing. So I don't want to put someone in a situation and kind of take glee in their demise. But I've like that one situation with the lady in the checkout line. It was good to kind of put her in as a goofball.
All right, so we're going to go into now. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
And we're ready to go.
Lightning round.
Sort of. What is your favorite word?
Euphoria.
What is your least favorite word?
Turd.
What turns you on creatively or spiritually?
Challenges.
What turns you off?
Repetition.
What sound or noise do you love?
Birds.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Static.
What profession, other than the one you currently do, would you like to attempt?
First thing that comes to my mind, professional wrestler.
What profession would you not like to do?
Waitress.
And the final question, if heaven exists, what would you like God to say to you when you met him at the pearly gates?
I'm sorry?
Yes. All right. Yes.
Survey says.
Boom. All right. So we're at that point now where I need you to get out all of your social media links, ways to be able to find you so we can stalk you in your books.
Okay. NicoleCushing.com is the one-stop shopping place for all my internet presence. So that's NicoleCushing. Some people want to put an H in Nicole. Don't put the H. You don't need that. And also, I'm not related to Peter Cushing. I would like to just put that out front. I wish I was, but my lineage is more in the redneck sort of area. But so NicoleCushing.com. I have a YouTube channel that's just under Nicole Cushing. So if you go there, you'll see a little picture of Edgar Allan Poe, and that's where you know you're in the right place. And I have lots of videos up there. You can see me read the first chapter of Mr. Suicide in a bookstore, that kind of thing, and lots of other stuff too. And then Twitter is at Nicole Cushing. Facebook is good. I try to be really accessible to people, and because I love hearing from readers. I mean, that's like the coolest thing in the world when a reader reaches out to you. So that's great.
All right. What is one question that you wish we would have asked that we haven't yet?
You guys did an awesome job. So I don't know if I'm kissing up to the interviewer too much, but I think you guys did perfectly. I mean, as far as like the one thing I would like to answer that maybe hasn't been asked is that my cat's name is Jasmine, but we sometimes call her Jazzy.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like cats.
Oh yeah, I call her Jasmine the Jazzy Cat. And if you look at my YouTube station, occasionally you'll be able to see a picture of Jasmine the Jazzy Cat, because she likes to pop up every once in a while. She's been laying low during our talk tonight, which
Good
yeah.
job. Better than Scott's behemoth that he calls Kitty. All right, so
It's a good thing.
Yeah, cat animals are very important to creative people.
Oh,
There is a necessity to be able to have them around, and they can inspire, and also they can make you frustrated too. So things happen.
Mhm.
All right. Lovely to have you on Zombiepalooza Radio for the first time. I appreciate your presence, and I look forward to bringing you on again.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Go ahead and up to the very top. There you go. All right, so we are going to be going and bringing on our next guest. His name is Kevon Ward, and I know, I saw that. Okay, push that button. I am not taking a break tonight. I'm just going from one interview to the next.
Ooh, hard interviewing.
Yeah, it's it's a thing, but I think that it's probably a good thing because we don't have like the music that we used to put in between and all of that kind of fun stuff.
We still have a YouTube thing.
Yep. And speaking of YouTube, please go ahead and, if you're listening now or if you're going to be listening in around the second time around or so, go ahead and give us a like and a share if you like what we're doing. If you don't like what we're doing and you want something different, why don't you leave a message, because we're always interested in hearing what you have to say.
Please do. I gotta feed my kids.
I know, right?
All 100 of them.
All right, I'm waiting for you. Now, I haven't done a sound check with Kevon, so I don't know if he's going to be able to get in the way I need him to. So we're just kind of hanging around. So what have you been up to lately, Dead Door?
I've been chasing Crunchy for the last 2 hours when I came on at 9:30. Finally caught him and brought him home. He was out scurrying around somewhere. Sorry.
He has a habit of doing that. That's all right.
We ended up at the Union County theater where, my buddy James.
Mm-hmm.
His son was in a play tonight.
Oh. What was the name of the play?
I don't remember, but I remember his son being Sherlock Holmes. Well, the zombie brain is kind of slow.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting.
I'm wondering if we're going. I'm wondering if we have a no-show here.
Uh-oh. We can't have no-shows.
I know. That would be a bad thing, especially when we have people watching what's going on. So they might be checking out to see how we're gonna pull this out. I'm thinking if that's the case, I'm thinking maybe what I'll do is I'll go and I'll get my last hour and I'll just bring them now. So our last hour is author Jas T. Ward, and she's a pretty cool author.
Cool.
I'm going to give it another 2 minutes, and then I'm going to go over and see if she is around and just move along. You know, things happen.
Yeah, hey, show must go on.
Right. He just messaged me a few minutes ago, though, and I don't understand why he would not. I know, right? So let's get over here. Dun dun dun. Oh, there. Are you around? To shoot up to this hour. It's a very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Scott. Hi, Scott.
Welcome back, Scott.
Do you know where Kevin is? Because we're waiting for him to come on. We didn't lose sound on him, did we?
Yep, we lost sound on Scott now.
Rud.
Catch your battery, Scott.
I don't have any sound on you. What was it that he had to do the last time he lost sound?
He had to take his battery out.
Oh, and take the like cache it or something.
Yeah.
How do you mime this? Okay. I got a brand new case. I hope I don't bust it. Watch. If he's still using his phone, because I don't know if he's on his phone or whatnot. Dun,
Dun dun dun.
dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. You. Take it apart.
Yep, detach the battery.
Yeah, we got a poor Scott having all kinds of problems tonight. Geez. All right. Yeah, I really don't know where Kevin is, and Kevin was on Face Off on the 9th season of Face Off and did quite well for himself.
Awesome.
And I was kind of excited to have him on. I don't know where the heck he is. But, well, you know, things happen. And I don't know where Jas is. Around?
Oh no.
Do the show tonight. Sorta need to know. Well, it might be an early night for me, which is okay too, you know. We had some pretty amazing interviews in the beginning. So what did you think about our last hour?
Oh, that was a great interview. 2 nominees, 2 different books.
That's actually, it hasn't been done too often.
No.
So she was very, you know what? I almost said she was very lucky. You know, luck had nothing to do with it.
No.
A lot of
Talent.
people, yeah. I mean, to get superior achievement and have it for your first time out as a novelist is really very, very cool. So let's see if Scott is able to bring himself back in here. And it may very well be an early night. I'm also getting disturbance from the, I don't know if it's from the Wi-Fi, but every once in a while I hear me in my headset.
Yeah, it might be from the Wi-Fi, from the internet. Because that last, from Nicole's, you were bouncing off of her.
Right. I don't know where either one of these two people are.
Like I can hear myself every once in a while.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on.
Scott, we got video back. What about sound?
Hi, Scott. Nope.
No sound yet.
I don't. Sometimes that happens if I boot somebody off, but I didn't touch the button. I was over here minding my own business. So I don't know why we lost sound on him. That's kind of weird. All right, well. Poor Scott. I have no idea where Kevin is, and I'm kind of like not really thrilled about this because I just spoke to him.
Hopefully he's not in the time zone.
Oh, he already knew. And like I said, I talked to him about 10 minutes before this last hour was up. So I don't know. And I can't get a hold of Jas, so I don't know where the heck she is. And Scott's still having problems with his sound.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
Crazy
Well, what do you suggest I do?
Oh. Oh no. And get on Facebook here and searching people down.
All right. Well, everybody knows that I'm trying to get a hold of both these people. Live, when you're doing something live like this, you really need to make your mark and be on time, because if you don't, then it kind of leaves us at a position where we have dead time. So I'm going to see about bringing somebody on.
Oops.
No, right?
I just had my first oopsie for a while.
You know, we've almost been doing this show for about 3.5 years now. I think in April it'll be 3.5 years. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I can.
That'll be 2 years with Crunchy, I think.
2 years.
Or close to April. Yeah, with Crunchy.
All right. You know what? Hi, Crunchy.
Dear. Hey, I am so sorry for chasing off, but I heard there was a show downtown, so I had to go find out what it was about.
Well, was it fun? Did you have a good time? At least?
It was a blast down there. It was awesome. Kids put on a great show. It was the Union County High School putting on a play here in Blairsville, Georgia.
Pretty cool. All right. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to shut this thing down, because the guest that I was going to bring on, he is also going to be stepping out in a few minutes. So
Oh, lovely.
this is what happens when we do live radio. It doesn't always go according to plan. That's all right. All right. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna say, Dead Door, you know what to do.
Yeah, we do it every week. Everybody out there, thanks for coming by. Jackie, love you. Crunchy, Scott, all of our guests. Everybody have a good night. Oh, wait, one person important. George Romero.
Yeah.
We love you. We're hunting you. You have a good night, a good morning, and a good evening.
That's all, folks.